Welcome to the collection of the wildest and craziest AITA Reddit stories of all time. From wild betrayals to shocking twists, these tales will leave you questioning who is really in the wrong. Let's dive in together. The first story for this collection is from Clicking Pop. AITA for divorcing my husband, whom I caught naked with my sister. Does he deserve a second chance? I, F35, was married to my husband, M42, for 8 years. We have 2 kids together, a son, 9, and a daughter, 7. I thought our life was stable and happy until everything unraveled 7 months ago. I found out that my husband was cheating on me with my younger sister, 24. I didn't discover it through subtle clues or intuition. My son overheard an inappropriate conversation between the two of them at a family gathering and came to me, confused and upset. When I confronted my husband, he denied it at first, but eventually admitted to the affair. I was utterly shattered, but what made it even worse was that my mom sided with my husband and sister. She defended their actions, saying, "Your sister is young and doesn't know any better, and your husband must have felt neglected to fall for someone else." Then she had the audacity to suggest I forgive them and keep the family together for the kids. I was stunned and disgusted. My dad, on the other hand, was furious. He called out my mom's behavior, told her she was enabling betrayal, and eventually filed for divorce from her because he couldn't tolerate her lack of morals. He's been one of my few sources of support throughout all of this. I filed for divorce immediately and cut off my mom and sister completely. My kids have been struggling with the fallout. My son is especially angry and has told me he doesn't want anything to do with his dad. My daughter is quieter, but has been acting out in small ways. We've been going to therapy together, and I've been doing everything I can to help them navigate this while also trying to heal myself. Over the past few months, I've started putting my life back together. I've focused on my kids, leaned on my dad and close friends for support, and even started dating someone new, F36. She's been incredible, kind, understanding, and supportive. She's great with my kids, and they've grown to love her, which makes me feel like I can finally see a light at the end of the tunnel. But the chaos isn't over. My sister's relationship with my ex-husband has completely fallen apart. Shocking, right? Now she's blaming my mom, saying she encouraged the whole thing. My mom, meanwhile, is blowing up my phone, accusing me of tearing the family apart by refusing to forgive them. She says my new relationship is a slap in the face to our family and claims I'm being selfish for not letting her or my sister back into my life. To top it off, my ex-husband has been reaching out, begging for forgiveness and asking for a second chance. He's telling me it was all a mistake and that he misses me and the kids. My son and daughter both want nothing to do with him, but I'm conflicted about how much of a relationship, if any, they should have with their father. My dad and friends say I'm doing the right thing by cutting out toxic people and focusing on rebuilding my life. But the guilt tripping from my mom and sister is starting to wear me down, and I'm wondering if I'm being too harsh. Should I try to reconcile with my mom and sister for the sake of family? Should I give my ex more of a chance to be involved for the sake of the kids? AITA for divorcing my husband, cutting off my mom and sister, and moving forward with my life and new relationship. Edit. I have changed my number, and I'm currently moving. No, I don't speak to any of my ex-husband's family, and apparently the snitch was my aunt and her husband. Are we shocked? So I'm officially not speaking to them. And for the people complaining about the fact my kids know my girlfriend, so what? My children adore her. Also for the custody. It's 60-40, meaning I can choose which schedule the kids can have with their father, since I'm the primary. No, I'm not forcing my kids to not speak to their dad. They've told me numerous times that they don't like going to my ex-husband's house, and I respect that. I'm currently going for full custody. For the people telling me to get a restraining order, my lawyer said they haven't done anything to endanger my children, and I legally can't get one. My dad also has some suspicions that my mom cheated on him with how she was defending the affair. OP is not an AH for demanding a divorce. OP's husband is an AH for having a secret affair with OP's sister. OP's mother is also an AH for supporting OP's husband and sister. OP's decision to cut off contact with her sister and mother is completely justified. So, I would rate OP's husband 3.5, OP's sister 2.5, and OP's mother 2 out of 5, and OP 0 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from Pleasant-Iron-8508. AITA for not wanting to go on a Christmas cruise with my sister and her kids. I, 37F, have 2 kids, 11F and 9M, with my husband, 37M. We celebrate Christmas every year with my sister, 40F, and brother, 42M, and their kids, as well as our parents, 67M and 67F. My sister's oldest is also 11. Her son Sherman is in the same K-6 elementary school my daughter Everly is in. They are both in 6th grade. Sherman and Everly used to be pretty close. They started drifting apart a few months ago when Everly started dating Dayton, 11M. I thought this was just Everly getting caught up in silly preteen love. That was until Sunday. We invited my sister and brother and their families over to help make baked goods for an upcoming holiday bake sale at the school. Dayton was with us. Once my sister arrived with her kids, Dayton ran into our basement and Everly followed him. I wanted to see what they were doing, so I went to go in there and saw they locked the door to the basement, which Everly knows she isn't allowed to do. So I started knocking on the door until Everly opened it and asked me to come inside and talk, so I went in the basement. She told me that Sherman and his best friend Alan, 11M, have a history of bullying Dayton. She gave me multiple examples. Dayton plays basketball, and that's his biggest passion in life. Sherman and Alan have repeatedly called Dayton and his friends stupid jocks. This is despite the fact that at a recent trivia bowl at the school, Dayton and 2 of his basketball teammates beat Sherman, Alan, and another boy and won the championship. I was there and didn't see any problems, but I was told the day after in school, Sherman and Alan said that they only won because of the CK on the team, referring to a Filipino-American boy in their class and a close friend of Dayton. Dayton reported this to the teacher of the class Alan and Sherman are in, and both lost recess for a week and got a phone call home. They also mock his religious beliefs. Our family is atheist, and so is Alan's family. Dayton's family is also atheist, but he started to go to church with the aforementioned Filipino boy. His family is quite active in the Salvation Army near us, and Dayton is a Christian and involved with them. Dayton has never tried to preach to anyone to my knowledge, but he does have a Bible bracelet thing he got off the TikTok shop and wears a cross necklace. I know his faith is important to him, and Alan and Sherman have mocked him for praying at lunch. I went up to my sister Answer, asked to talk to her in my bedroom. I mentioned everything that happened, and she said that Dayton and Everly were exaggerating some light teasing, and accused their teacher of pushing an agenda to go after Alan and Sherman. She said that she has things under control and not to worry. I went back downstairs and told Everly and Dayton to stay down. I told my sister that if she didn't make Sherman apologize, that they would have to leave. She tried to gear Sherman to apologize, but he refused and doubled down. He was laughing and clearly had no remorse for his actions. I told my sister she needed to go home and talk to Sherman. Alan and his family were also supposed to come on the cruise. I was able to get Alan's mom's Facebook and messaged her there. She defended her son and called Dayton a crybaby. I tried contacting my sister again, and she started to yell at me for contacting Alan's mom and trying to embarrass the boys. I told her that if she didn't get her son in line, I would be fine missing the cruise and losing the money and taking my kids and Dayton somewhere nice, and texted Dayton's parents about what went down, who told me more stories about mean things the boys told Dayton's other friends. My mother started texting me after I got off with my sister asking me to pick up. She said that I can't just abandon my family over this, and said that my sister and I need to come together and compromise. I told her that I wasn't going to compromise on standing against bigoted 11-year-old pricks. AITA? OP is not an age for prioritizing her children's well-being. OP's sister is an age for not taking accountability of her child's behavior. OP's reaction is completely justified. She did nothing wrong. So, I would rate OP's sister 2.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from Bakewell Fart. AITA for excluding my niece because she's disabled? I, my sisters, and my friends like to hang together, and because everyone's got kids except me and one other friend we usually host at one of their houses, because it's almost impossible for everyone to get childcare. So we just go to whoever can't get a sitter for the night. We will have some wine, some of the girls smoke weed, etc. But it's not a party, nothing inappropriate, and if any of the kids came downstairs or needed a responsible adult, etc., they'd find a ton. The problem started when one of the group's daughters, 13, wanted to stay down with us for a bit after bed. Her mom said sure. She showed us some TikTok dances that we all tried and failed at, and we all had a laugh. She went to bed when asked, and it was fine. A week after we do it at my sister's home, and when I get there, I'm surprised her daughter, the niece I refer to in my title, 11, is still up. I give her a hug and say she's lucky to have such a late night, and she says, oh, the party's just getting started. I was confused but just laughed. For context, she's got ADHD and autism, and sometimes just says things that to her make sense but baffle me. I too have ADHD, so I don't get what she's talking about, but I get that to her she's probably just made a hilarious joke. Anyway, I asked my sister what time is Leia, niece, going to bed, and she said, oh, whenever she's too tired. And I'm like, but you know she's a mare when she's tired? And she kind of just brushes me off saying that she's getting older now and wants to join in like our friend's daughter did the last time. Anyway, everyone else arrives and it's just a nightmare. She dominated every conversation, gets frustrated, keeps doing random attention-seeking behavior like pretending to grab the wine bottle, etc. All the things you can expect when a divergent kid who craves routine is thrown off and tired, basically. Lots of the kids in the group are divergent, lots of the mums are single, so we all love and understand each other's kids. But the whole point of this time is to be away from the kids and just be ourselves. The night ended with everyone having to leave early, as me and my sister had to wrestle Leia into her room with her screaming, crying, and fully melting down. I know it sounds dramatic because she's 11, but she's 5, 7, and quite overweight, so she nearly threw me down the stairs during this altercation. I didn't say anything to my sister in the moment. Even though we all knew this would happen, she looked embarrassed and defeated, and I felt like she just wanted her kid to be able to join in like the others can. I just said, well done for trying your best. So, anyway, the next session rolls around, and I volunteered to make a curry, so we are hosting at mine. I nearly thought it was a mirage when I saw my niece walking up my driveway with my sister. I'm like, is everything okay? Is Mac okay? Her husband who would be looking after my niece. And my sister just says, oh yes, I just thought I'd give him the night off. They both just walk in and I'm confused, but also starting to panic. When my niece comes round, I hide my PlayStation, my valuables, anything breakable. Not cash, she's not a thief, she's just so destructive, and you just don't know what's going to happen if she has a meltdown. I'm not prepared, and I tell my sister this. She's got her back up and says how it's fine, and Leia just wanted to prove herself after last week. Literally as she's saying this, I hear something heavy drop upstairs. It's my porcelain doll from my great-grandmother, and it's smashed, completely. I look at my niece and she's panicking, flustered, apologizing, and now I'm even more scared, because I know I need to get her down the stairs before she fully melts down, because I don't have a safe room for her to smash up. Me and my sister manage to get her into the car, and my sister says nothing. I am reassuring my niece, trying to stop her from freaking out and going ape, but my sister's just in silence. They left once she was somewhat calm, and I text my sister saying I don't blame her for the doll, and I don't blame her for her daughter wanting to be involved with the big girls, but she can't show up unannounced with her, especially not when it's supposed to be girls' night, and she knows I'm totally child-free, so my home isn't baby-proof. Never mind, Leia-proof. Since then, she won't speak to me. She's talking to the rest of the group and everything, and told one person she isn't talking to me because I ostracize her daughter because she's disabled. I've tried to message her. I even showed up at her house. She just closed the curtains. I just want my baby sister back, and I honestly just feel awful. But at the same time, I don't think I'm asking for much. The rest of the group say they agree with me. But IDK if everyone's just trying to play nice to everyone. I don't even really care if I'm the... I'm honestly just more interested in if anyone knows how I can fix this. We have never fallen out like this, but TBH, I do very much have to be the bigger person a lot. So IDK if she's done with me or just being Marty. This has just never happened before. OP is not an AH for hosting a child-free gathering. OP's sister is an AH for breaking the rules of the gathering and bringing her daughter. OP's reaction is completely justified. Her frustration is valid. So I would rate OP's sister 1.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from Gazunga, AITA for yelling at my mother after she kept pestering us about grandchildren. I am 26, and my girlfriend of 6 years, F27, are staunchly child-free. We're each our own kind of autistic, and neither of us want children because of how neurotic we can be at times. We do quite well for ourselves and have plenty of disposable incomes because we kick-started our careers early and saved early on. I'm a journeyman electrician and in the process of getting my electrical engineering degree, and my girlfriend is on her way to becoming a nurse practitioner. We're both super busy, as you can imagine, with both work and school and such, and it can get rough at times, but we manage. My father passed away a year ago, and it sent shockwaves throughout our small family. And now my mother moved in with us after selling her house because she was getting too old to live on her own. She had me at 34 and she lived out in the country, so it wasn't the safest for her. She cooks and cleans while we work, buys the groceries with her SS, and generally tries to make herself useful even though we tell her it isn't necessary. We appreciate her efforts due to how busy we are. Our diets absolutely have improved, LOL. But we're worried because doesn't have a lot of hobbies, and oftentimes doesn't know what to do with herself. I'm not sure why she hasn't looked for any hobbies, but that's her choice, I suppose. I'm her only child, and recently, over the past few months, she's started to pester the both of us about giving her grandchildren she can spoil. At first, I made a joke about our cat being her grandchild, and she thought it was funny but didn't stop. I figured it was just a phase, and that she'd move on, but she didn't. Every day she just kept making these little comments about grandchildren and that our kids would be adorable. It was easy to ignore at first, but she wouldn't stop. Then one day I had a hard week at work and didn't get enough sleep at all. And while she was making breakfast the next morning, she kept bringing it up and kept trying to make it into a serious conversation, talking about how a grandchild would make her so happy. I finally snapped and told her to let it go, and I got loud. Nothing serious. But I did tell her she was unbearable when all she thought about was grandchildren, and I couldn't understand why she couldn't just get the f over the fact that me and my SO were child-free and happy. She continued the rest of the meal in silence and proceeded to give me the cold shoulder for the rest of the day. That was several weeks ago. She's like a completely different person now. She still cooks and cleans and stuff, but she barely talks at all. And when there's nothing to do, she just sits on the couch and rots away, eyes glazed over as she watches Family Feud, Antique Roadshow, and whatever else old people watch. She never wants to go anywhere or do anything, especially not with us. Whenever I try to have a conversation with her that's more than discussing a basic necessity, she just gives me a dirty, bitter look, and I usually back off. She just does whatever chores she sets out to do that day. We don't require anything from her. This is all out of her own volition, and then just watches TV. Watching is a strong word, more like she just sits there and just rots. I can't think of a better word for it. So recently me and my girlfriend were talking, and we found a great deal on a cruise and decided to go since we had amassed a lot of PTOs. We bought the tickets and surprised her with one, thinking a cruise from Budapest to Amsterdam would cheer her up. She just glowered at the tickets like I had handed her a bag of dog shit as a birthday gift, and then asked me what it was for. I told her that we wanted to go on a cruise with her to maybe cheer her up and help her get out of the house. Her response? Why did you start to pretend that you care about my happiness all of a sudden? I want nothing to do with this. Go refund it. I felt so dirty when she said that, like I couldn't even be in the same room as her. And I left the house entirely for a few hours to go get some fresh winter air, and even now I'm still processing what the hell is going on. My mother is like a completely different person now, and I don't know if it's my fault or not. AITA? Did I cause this? OP is not an AH for being clear in her statement. OP's mother is an AH for invading their privacy and trying to pressure her into having a child. OP and her husband have already agreed to remain child-free. Her mother should show some support for their decision instead of accusing OP. So, I would rate OP's mother 2.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from Clear Equivalent 7210. AITA. If I confronted and told the truth of my mom for cheating and disappearing for a year? Me, 14M, Mum, 45F, Dad, 50M, Brother, 17M. Around 3-ish years ago, I woke up from a nap and went into my dad's office, just to see what he was doing. I was next to him when I looked down on his desk and saw a divorce paper. I of course was confused, then broke down, and my dad had the idea of going down to church and talk about it. But he didn't want to tell my mom because that would make things messy, and we both weren't ready for that, so we tell her we're going to get snack. Once we are at the church, we had a talk, and I asked a lot of questions like why, and he asked, "You know how mom hasn't been around for a while?" I reply yes, and he tells me some excuse for why she was out for such a long time. Sorry, I don't really remember what he said. Maybe a day or two later we were in the car, and I asked him if mom was cheating, because I was confused on why she would file for divorce for no reason, and he says yes. He also tells me how he hired a private investigator to see what my mom was doing whilst she was away. Turns out she was with her new boyfriend. Let's call him Brian. This, of course, kind of shocked me and broke me. Over next few days, I asked my dad about Brian and if he had a family, and of course he did. I also asked where they were going if he had a family, and apparently they were going to a friend's house. And I also remember going to that house with my mom before she started disappearing. I also remember one of her friends being there, let's call her Candle. And my dad goes on to tell me how Candle had a kid with a really rich guy, then divorced him, and got full custody, so he had to pay child support. And as me and my dad got closer because of this, we would go out and he would tell me some things like misery loves company, and how he suspects Candle got mom into cheating. My mom would also always lie to us and tell us she was going to one of her friends' houses because a dog died or a friend needed help with something. And we all had to go along with the lies. I also promised my dad I wouldn't tell my older brother. My dad also asked me if I wanted to keep hearing about this stuff. I said yes, but really didn't want to because it was destroying me on the inside, and I was just hiding it. I also said yes because I thought it helped my dad, because it gave him someone to talk about this stuff. And listen. Also, forgot to mention this, but Brian has 4 kids, 2 older boys, and 2 girls. One of the girls has Down syndrome and is nonverbal. I don't know the ages of them. So when Brian and my mom were going to friend's house, he left his wife to deal with them on her own, like my dad. Then my dad comes to me and says how he is about to call a family meeting and announce the divorce to me and my brother, and told me to act like I didn't know anything. So, my dad and mom sit me and my brother down, and my mom tell us how they both wanted to get a divorce and so on. Months after, and my mom had moved out, I started getting really depressed and started to cut myself, because I blamed myself a lot for the things my mom did. I even wrote notes on listing reasons on why I want to commit suicide, but like an idiot, I left this note out. And whilst I was at school, my mom was cleaning the house and found this note, and the same day me and my brother get called out of school. This was a shock to me, and my brother and my dad takes us out to an art festival. After the festival, my dad tells me that him and my mom were about to talk to me about the note my mom found, so we sit down and talk, and I talk about how my mom disappearing for a year really sucked for me, and mom was apologizing, but I think that was because she only had to be sorry in the moment. My dad then goes on to tell me he is signing me up for therapy. Long story short, I lied in therapy to make my dad look good, and got nothing from it. Timeline so far. Me finding out about the divorce. October, November, announcement of divorce. December, mom moving into apartment. January, therapy. February. Skip to 6 to 5 months ago. I was finally introduced to Brian. My mom made me play drums for him, and wanted me to let him play on my kit, so I put my heart and soul into the fills I was playing to make him intimated to play. And it worked. I don't want him touching my stuff, especially my drums. But after this, I went to my dad's, and he again gives me a heads up that he is going to call me and my brother and talk to us about the private investigator stuff. So now, I don't need to hide it from my brother. This timeline is going to get messy. Fast forward a year, and it's again around Christmas time, and I'm at my grandmother's on my mom's side playing pool, and my grandpa got drunk, and was telling me and my brother how strong my mom is, and how good of a mother she is. This confirming my theory that my mom told her family that she was the good guy, and that she sacrificed a lot of stuff for us. Now fast forward to like 2 months ago, I went to go see the movie We Live in Time, and my mom picked me up slightly drunk with her mom and a friend of hers, both of them super drunk, and I essentially have to babysit them, and the friend tells me again how strong of women she is, and how she's a great mom. These comments always crush me on the inside, because they don't know the truth, and I'm being told my mom's great because she disappeared for a year. AITA for confronting my mom and telling my family about the truth, or should I drop it, because it was so long ago? OP is not an AH for investigating her mother's private affair. OP's mother is an AH for being unfaithful in her relationship with OP's father. OP's reaction is completely justified. He is emotionally devastated by her mother's actions. So, I would rate OP's mother 3.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the scale. AITA for ghosting my dad because he didn't throw a sweet 16 party for me? I, 16F, haven't really had a close relationship with my dad. We don't live together, and I visit him 1 to 2 times a year during school holidays. He sends money every month for child support, and texts me occasionally. Our relationship has been fine until these past 2 years, but I'll get into that a little later. So, around June, schools were closing, and I was ready to go for holidays to celebrate my birthday, which was on the 27th. Months prior, my stepmom, who's my dad's wife, had promised her, and my dad would throw me a sweet 16 party. She even said I could invite my friends. Mind you, my dad was in the room, so I assumed he was also going along with it. So, when I texted my dad about when he'll fetch me and the plans for the party, he disappointed me when he said, "Sorry, sweetie, I don't have money right now. Maybe I'll get you a cake? Or something else." I was pissed. In my head, I assumed he was going to, save some money for the party. That would the obvious thing to do. But apparently, he didn't. And he always had a habit of doing this. Whenever I ask him for stuff, like I text him, "Hi, I need money for some few necessities," he'd always go, "Sorry, I don't have any money right now, blah, blah, blah." But whenever I actually visit him, he'll yap his ass off and go, "I'm your father, you can tell me what you need." But when I do, he complains about it. This time wasn't any different. And sure, you might think, well, why would you expect more if he barely does the minimum? But here where it's different, all the times I asked him for stuff and bailed on me, my mom was there. She was the one that filled the gaps I needed for support. Unlike my dad, I lived with my mom. She didn't earn much from her job, but she managed to get me most of the stuff that I needed. But of course, she was a single parent, and she still had to take care of my other 2 siblings, half-siblings. So she kept asking Dad to increase the money he sent every month. Mind you, he's been sending me the same amount since I was a baby. And you'd think growing up and hitting puberty would mean needing more things, which meant sending more money. But he always went, "What about she just lives with me?" I did not want to live with him. But the money I send is enough. It wasn't. He just deflected it, and Mother eventually decided to give up on his ass and deal with the issues on her own, like she always did. But now I don't have her anymore. That's the difference. My mom passed away 2 years ago, 2022. And since then, I've been struggling without her help. You would think my dad would be like, "Oh, her mother died. Not only does she need emotional support, but she needs me to fill in the role for both parents now." But nope, out the window, just a simple party for my sweet 16. Nothing. He didn't think ahead. He didn't even try to seem like he cared. And mind you, he barely checked on me either. Earlier this year, he had the audacity to go, "Why don't you text me? I'm your dad. You should check on me. I should check up on you." Me? He is the parent, and I'm the child in this relationship. He should constantly check up on me, visit me, make sure I'm okay after losing my mother. But no. None of that. Only thing he did was attend my mom's funeral. And that was it. Now I have to rely on him more, and it's not fair because he still continues the same habits, the constant complaints about not having money, the refusal to increasing child support, and just downright childish behavior. So, when he said he couldn't throw the party, I simply texted him that I wasn't coming to visit him anymore. He seemed a bit surprised based on his texts, but I didn't care. I was sick of his half-assed efforts of being a parent. A week later, my stepmom called me, to my surprise, but I answered the call. She explained to me she didn't want me to feel left out, just because my half-sister lived with him, and I didn't. She continued on to say, she feels as though I'm not getting the same attention and support like my sister because of the distance I am from him. Even though that's not the case, but I digress. She asked me what I wanted for my birthday. So, in my mind, I was like, oh, my dad has the money? So, why lie? Either way, I was happy I could get something out of my birthday, so I asked if she could ask my dad to send money so I could go to an amusement park with my friends. I decided to not go for the birthday party, and just wanted to avoid my dad as much as possible, so she agreed and said she'll tell him. I waited for about 2 days and decided to call him. No answer. Okay, fine. The next day, no answer. Then I decided to reach out to my stepmom again. No answer. Then my sister, no freaking answer. It felt like they were all avoiding me or something, but I decided to brush it off and wait, until my stepmom texted me and said, "I told your dad, but he just looked at me with a sad expression." She then went, "I think you hurt his feelings since you're not coming." What? I was flabbergasted. First of all, that doesn't make any sense because why would he now feel sad if I'm not coming? I barely come anyway, so why is he disappointed now? Out of all the times I didn't come? Second, why the is he sad? Why would he be sad while he barely even does the bare minimum for me, let alone supporting me? It baffled me, and I was in fact not going to apologize for hurting him. The following day he called me, and what he said made me know he was lying and incompetent to even do anything. He said, "I'm sending you this amount of money. It was half the amount of what I asked for, and it wouldn't cover all the costs for my birthday, so I went. But that's not what I asked for. I told my stepmom to tell you the amount." He went, "She never told me anything. Liar." How would he know to send money if my stepmom didn't tell him? Why would he lie about her not telling him? I just know he was trying to get out of the situation. I was so done with his behavior, I spent my sweet 16 in bed, crying. I decided to ghost him for all those months. He tried texting me, but I didn't answer. And now I just know he'll complain about ignoring his texts. And I'm pretty sure my dad's side of the family will try to side with him. Edo feels a bit guilty though, and I just want to know if ghosting him was the best thing to do. And if not, what should I do? So, am I the OP is not an AH for ghosting her father for months. Her father is an AH for not fulfilling his parental responsibilities. OP's reaction is 100% justified. Her decision to keep her distance from her father after his behavior is understandable. So, I would rate OP's father 2.5 on the AH scale and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from Cindy Sweetheart. AITA for taking my young children on a family vacation to Japan without my husband? A few days ago, my 35F mother sent a mass text to my adult siblings and I that she found an amazing deal on airfare from Los Angeles to Tokyo, $450 USD to travel in mid-January. My parents offered to cover the cost of the airfare and hotel for all of us, so that the entire family could take a trip there and visit the Disney parks. Similarly, my parents paid for our airfare, hotel, park tickets last year, around this time, for us to all go to Disney World in Florida. The whole family also currently has annual passes to Disneyland in California, and we visit the parks 2 times a month. Our children are 6 and 4 years old. Our 6-year-old son has autism, high functioning, low support, level 1, but for the most part, he has traveled by plane to various places without much issue. However, like all children, it doesn't mean that we are able to go on vacation without some challenges due to the change in routine, time changes, etc. On even run-of-the-mill excursions to activities close to home, my husband, 35M, has very little patience for our son's challenges due to his autism. Our son has gotten much better at being flexible when things go awry, and his meltdowns are much more manageable by talking him through it. However, my husband cannot handle any type of disruption in public. He will literally walk away and leave me alone with the kids to fend for myself if our son begins to cry or get upset. Because of this attitude, my husband constantly says no to going places with our kids because it's a hassle and not enjoyable if our son is with us. I am not okay with this. It is not our son's fault that his autism makes some situations a little more challenging, and it's up to us to make modifications or plan ahead as best as possible to accommodate him. I don't feel we should withhold him from things that he wants to participate in because of his disability or because it's inconvenient. When I brought up the trip to my husband, he laughed in my face and said, "Absolutely not," without discussing it. After I pushed on it, he claimed it was because he wouldn't be able to get a week off work. He's a cop. Which I know is not true, because he was able to swing over a week off to visit his family out of state in November, with only 3 weeks' notice. I suggested that the children and I go without him then. We would be traveling with my parents, 4 sisters, 2 brother-in-laws, 2 uncles and 4 nieces, nephews, all same age or younger than our children. We would be the only members of my immediate family not attending this family vacation. He said no. When I asked what the reason was, he replied, "I don't have to give you a reason why I said no." Basically, he doesn't want to go, but he also just doesn't want us to travel without him. My husband is a big football fan and frequently travels with his buddies to various states to watch his team play, and spends the weekend without me or the kids. He's also gone to Vegas with work friends on more than one occasion. I have never traveled anywhere without him for the entirety of our relationship, 10+ years. Hell, since we had kids, I've only gone to lunch with friends alone, maybe 2 to 3 times in the past 6 years. I am a Satyam, so I am always with my children and nowhere else. I don't think it's fair that I have to continually miss experiences, some once in a lifetime, just because it's not something he wants to do. This is not the first time I would be the only family member not participating in a large planned event because my husband said no. Legally, I could take them without his written consent, and my parents are paying for everything, so I wouldn't need him to pay for anything either. Since he frequently uses the fact that he is the only one providing an income to prevent me from doing things, I would be traveling with my whole family, so we would be safe, and I would have help with the kids. Would I be the if I went to Japan with the kids for 1 week with my family without his consent? OP is not an AH in her demand from her husband. OP's husband is an AH for neglecting her wife and children. He should show some accountability. Being a stay-at-home woman, OP has a right to make a demand from her husband. So I would rate OP's husband 2.5 on the AH scale and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story. From January_energy, AITA for not befriending my relative's affair partner at Christmas. The players. Me, my mom, Emma, 38F, my cousin, her mom, Tammy, my mom's sister, and my aunt, Sam, 40M. My cousin Emma brought a significant other, Sam, to Christmas last year. That significant other was a married guy with kids. They had had an affair, and he was then separated and attempting to leave his wife for Emma. Some of us knew he was married and some had no idea. I have a lot of traumas related to cheating. Specifically, my dad cheated on my mom over a span of a 40-year marriage. It was devastating and super f***ed up. More upsetting than the cheating was all of the lies and deception surrounding it, all in the name of protecting my mom. They've been in therapy, but it was rough for a while. Emma and Tammy know this. We're all very close. When my mom found out about the cheating, she moved to Charleston where she grew up, which is also where we have Christmas. Most of the family lives there, and the house she lives in that the family owns has always been a special gathering place. A few months before Christmas, Emma asked my mom if she could stay at the house for a couple days when my mom was out of the house for travel and bring a significant other to show him around, Sam. Excited about the relationship, Mom brought it up to Tammy, trying to get info about this mystery guy. She jokingly asked if he was married, and Tammy said yes, but he's working on separating. Obviously, Emma did not include that information and would later claim that it was to protect my mom because of her trauma. But of course, the lie by omission was extremely triggering to my mom. One of the more significant affairs my dad had was a workplace affair. Emma and Sam's affair was also a workplace affair, one that made them lose their jobs. My mom was hesitant to say yes, eventually did, but was yelled at, essentially bullied, and made to feel like for having any kind of emotional response to the situation that hit close to home and not being excited about it. Emma wanted his marital status to be private and has said she found it irrelevant. My mom was told to keep all of this information from me. BTW, we are extremely close. Fast forward to Christmas. I was feeling weird about the whole situation which I'd just been clued into the month before, and I was honestly angry at Emma for hurting my mom. While I want a good relationship for her, it doesn't matter to me what she does as long as it doesn't hurt anyone, but this did. To me, her request and response was inconsiderate of my mom's decades-long trauma. Knowing I'd been left out of the conversation from the beginning, and feeling weird because of my own relationship to it all, I decided to keep my distance more than usual and not stir the pot. It felt like engaging in our usual holiday-friendly camaraderie directly with her, and him was almost disrespectful to my mom, who was having horrible anxiety. Well, this apparently was the wrong move. Emma broke down and essentially claimed we didn't love her, and shamed her, and were cruel to her for being distant. She had been shamed at work and lost her apartment after losing her job, and was seeking comfort and support for the relationship from us at Christmas, which I obviously understand as an isolated desire. My brother chose to hang out with her and Sam like nothing had happened. He had also known about everything earlier than anyone. He didn't care about Sam at all, and had comforted Mom previously, saying that Emma crossed a line by lying, but he said I was wrong for behaving differently than I usually would toward her. We generally are pretty close for cousins, but not as close as I thought, or I wouldn't have been excluded from all info. I still to this day never got any direct info from Emma about anything. Besides, they fell in love at work, and she wanted support after getting shamed at work. The info I got about this was conflicting. Quitting versus being fired, etc. They're no longer together. He couldn't go through with the divorce, but this has completely altered our family's relationship, and they refuse to understand my mom's perspective, and thus my behavior. I feel like we're on two different planets. Can't even talk about it. So maybe I'm completely delusional or something, if it's no better after a year. AITA? OP is not an AH for keeping distance from her toxic cousin. OP's cousin Emma is an AH for prioritizing others over family. She did not care for OP's mother's feelings. OP's anger is 100% justified, so I would rate OP's cousin 2.5 on the AH scale and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Claymore_fan, AITA for not attending my father's birthday celebration and instead going to meet up with my BF's family. I, 18F, have been in a relationship with this wonderful piece of man, my boyfriend, 18M. We are high school sweethearts, and I know many would say that I'm being way too impulsive. But this guy has been actually a great partner. I have several things I have to work on but haven't since I haven't gone to a psychologist. For a little retrospective, when I was younger, I was bullied by family in my school, and even in the activities I did after school. The family stuff was more like those comments your family does about your body and appearance thing, and so I developed pretty low self-esteem. I am not even exaggerating when I say my BF has helped me a lot through all my insecurities. Now, I met my boyfriend in the second period of high school. He was this nerdy, geeky introvert guy, and long story short, we talked, I confessed, he confessed couple. By that time, I used to live with my father. My parents have been divorced since I was 5 years old, never an issue. But when we were about to enter high school, my mom told us that in order for us both, my brother and I, to start growing up in a different environment, our whole life we used to be in private colleges, that we would have to enter a public high school. By that time, I suffered severe anxiety. There were times in which I would totally block myself in the middle of an exam. My father told us he could pay for college, but we would have to live with him. I saw this as an opportunity since I didn't have many friends back in school, so I moved in with my father. Bad idea. For 3 years, I was more of a maid, doing dishes, house cleaning, clothes cleaning. I wasn't even able to go out without leaving the house spotless and blindly obeying my father. He did slap me on the face once, and another time I remember he tried to drag me out of the house because we had a little discussion about me wanting to dye my hair and telling him, "I don't need your permission to do things to myself," which obviously sounds exactly like, "I don't need you." So he proceeded to grab my arm and try to drag me out of his house, shouting at me. I was so scared, I hid under a table, crying, begging for forgiveness. 3 years passed, and I moved back in with my mom. Obviously, I told my dad, via text, I don't have the strength to do that face-to-face, that all those years, I felt as if I was never enough. I ended up with a total high school score of 9.1, which I think is like an A or A+. Even though I worked hard on my grades, if I had an 8-something, my dad would always scold me and punish me with no electronics. But since my brother was in a public school, it didn't matter if he failed classes because my father was always proud of him. There was this one moment in which my brother told my dad he felt sad and wasn't able to concentrate in school. The moment my dad heard that, he sent him to do some tests, and he is now diagnosed with ADHD. So, stupidly, once I told my dad with tears in my eyes how I felt about my low self-esteem and other stuff, he told me he would also get me tested and send me to therapy. He never sent me, and when I asked him about it, he just told me, "You don't need it." Moving forward from the trauma, nowadays the relationship with my father is complicated. Since I told him how I felt, how I never felt that I could get to his expectations, etc., he has been trying to reconnect by inviting me and my brother to visit him. I've previously used the excuse that since I have a dog who is 100% mine, I have to deal with the responsibility of taking care of it because my father didn't want to bring it with us. My father's birthday was yesterday, and I congratulated him, telling him things like, "I know we haven't had the best relationship, but I admire you for your ability to always improve. I will always be here to listen to you. Love you." He invited me and my brother to go see him at his house, I used my dog excuse and everything was working fine. But today, my BF told me since he has already finished his first semester at his university, he wanted to see me this weekend. This guy asked his mother for permission, and his mother invited me to a family dinner they'll have this Saturday, in which most of the most important family members for my BF will be. I know he has been trying to present me to his whole family in a much more formal way, so I asked my mom, and she gave me permission about 2 hours ago. My dad texted me that he can come for us and my dog in order for us to visit him, which took me guts, but I politely told him that a few hours ago I made very important plans and that I was sorry for that, but that I would love to celebrate him on another day. He just wrote me, "Never mind, forget it," and I feel guilty for that. Am I the OP is not an AH for attending her boyfriend's family gathering instead of her father's birthday. OP has a very strained relationship with her father, and she is the victim of physical and emotional abuse from him. She did nothing wrong by not going to her abusive father's birthday. OP's father is an AH for being so cruel to her for so long. So, I would rate OP's father 3.5 on the AH scale and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story. Brasuksu 743 AITA for overstepping my boundaries as a grandparent. My wife, 58F, and I, 58M, have 3 kids, 30F, 27M, and 25M. Our oldest has 2 sons, 13M and 3M, with her husband, 30M. Our oldest is currently on vacation with her husband. My wife and I agreed to take them in for the week, as they haven't had vacation without the kids for over a year. Liam is our 13-year-old grandson. I got a phone call from the office saying Liam needed to be picked up after he got suspended for 2 days. Liam's teacher called me after telling me about an altercation he had between another student, Riker, 13M. My daughter and Liam have talked about Riker before. They always portrayed it as Liam and Riker being 2 boys who just hated each other. Liam is active in the school community. He's president of the anime club, vice president of the Model UN, and does debate. He has friends, and I've met the boys he's friends with. They've told me that Riker is just popular with the jock boys. He plays baseball, and according to my daughter and Liam, bullies Liam in gym class. I always thought it was just 2 cliques of kids who didn't like each other for petty middle school drama. I asked the teacher what the boy did, and she said nothing, and told me that Liam consistently bullies this boy and his friends. I asked who it was, and she told me she couldn't say. I asked about Riker, and she said she couldn't say. But she said that the boy he got into an altercation with was a sweet boy, and she was said to see how Liam always argued with him. I asked Liam who it was when I picked him up from school, and he said it was Riker. This got me wondering if everything I was told by Liam and his mom was true. I asked a friend who also has a grandkid in the school if his granddaughter, 13F, knew anything. He got her on FaceTime, and I asked what she knew about Liam and Riker. She said that the Riker kid was friendly to her. She also said Riker has a lot of strong beliefs, and when I asked her about it, she said he was very woken. I asked what that meant, and she said he has a friend who identifies as a transgender boy, and how Riker got into a fight once about Liam regarding this friend. She said she didn't always agree with Riker's views, but he was nice and smart kid. He just doesn't really care about the academic stuff like Liam does, and that bothers Liam. Liam calls him dumb, but she said Riker was on the honor roll. I then asked about Liam, and she said that Liam and the group of boys he's friends with give girls the creeps. She mentioned incidents where Liam and his friends would make inappropriate misogynistic comments about girls' bodies, called the names like sluts, and mentioned how they watch sexist content creators. I was very angry when I heard about this. I know kids are not perfect, but I did not raise my daughter to be okay with none. I asked Liam about this, and he admitted to making those comments, saying he did nothing wrong and how he just speaks his mind. I asked my friend if he could ask his granddaughter for Riker's full name. I don't use Instagram much, but downloaded it to see my kids' posts. I found Riker's account and saw his mom was on there too. I messaged his mom and explained who I was and wanted to have Liam apologize to Riker if he was willing to accept an apology, and that I apologize for anything he's said. She said her son told her that he would message me. He sent a message saying that his parents don't understand his transgender friend and didn't see why he stuck up for him, but he told me he was thankful I was involved. He also told me about some other incidents of Liam saying racist and vile stuff. He told me that Liam should apologize to them. He said he can't forgive Liam, only they can. He also said that what happens in gym class is that he will tell the teacher when Liam refuses to participate, and Liam considers that bullying because he will get a detention for that. Riker said that he has prayed that Liam would stop being such a bigot. After all of this, I talked to Liam again, and he says I need to mind my own business. I called my daughter later on and asked if she knew about all of this, and why she never told me why Liam got in trouble for bigotry. She said that what happens between Liam and Riker and how she parents their dislike of each other is none of my business. She said Liam told them how I intervened and how I overstepped boundaries. I told her that I was just trying to make sure my grandson is a good person, and she got mad and hung up on me. AITA? OP is not an AH for asking his grandson to make excuses with his classmate, whom he passes negative comments on. OP's daughter is an AH for not taking accountability for her grandson's actions. OP is concerned about the upbringing of his grandson. His reaction is completely justified. So I would rate OP's daughter 2.5 on the AH scale and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. AITA. For exposing my aunt's secret affair and shocking $30K theft from her husband. I told my aunt's husband she was cheating on him. She had been to my knowledge for at least 5 years. All he told me was thank you, and that he appreciated it and wanted to make sure I wasn't lying out of anger towards my aunt. I told him I wasn't. Told him how she told me about it herself, and we left it at that. Then she tried telling him I was lying and that she was going to sue me, until 2 other people confirmed it to him too. Then my aunt tried going around saying he used to physically and emotionally be abusive towards her, and said that me telling him was basically a good thing, but that she had no proof of him ever doing anything to her, so she felt like everyone would think she was lying. I haven't heard any of this myself. All of this is being relayed back to me by my father, because I haven't talked to my mother since September, and my aunt since July. I have zero desire to do the back and forth with them, so I pretty much told my dad whatever happens, and that all I wanted to do was what I thought was the right thing, and tell her husband about the cheating. Now this is where I'm starting to regret it a little. I've never felt like I could trust or be very close to my mother and aunt for a lot of reasons, but my cousins I've always loved being around and having around my kids especially. But since telling my aunt's husband about the cheating, I've heard little to nothing from them. Thanksgiving past, nothing. Had invited them over beforehand, and said they would come. Some said they couldn't. No problem. No one showed. My birthday came, and not one person told me happy birthday or anything. I'm currently pregnant, and supposed to be having a gender reveal. One of my cousins I made the godmother to my 2 oldest, and now I'm thinking they won't even come for that. She was supposed to come over to see my new house and to see my kids, and never did either. I reached out to her, and she basically said she was staying out of it, and that she was tired of the he said, she said. I told her I understood, but that I haven't been talking to anyone, and didn't involve the cousins in the slightest, and because no one's been talking to me, I haven't the slightest clue what's been going on over there. To add to it, my aunt was the caretaker to my grandmother before she passed. All of us were supposed to get urns with her ashes, and my kids' necklaces. She's now refusing to give me those. I really just feel like I shouldn't have said anything at all. Part of me feels better, because I know it was wrong to not tell her husband, but I just miss my family, and feel like I've been shunned out, because everyone else was okay with keeping it a secret except me. Update. Trying to give info some people are wanting. There's a lot more that goes into that side of the family. It's just a lot to get into and not really sure how much is relevant. My aunt is one of 2 aunts on that side. Her and her husband never had children. They tried, but she has a lot of complications with that, so it's never worked out. She was actually doing IVF again, around the same time I came out pregnant with my oldest, but she miscarried. I'm assuming that's around when the cheating started, or possibly beforehand. My reason for telling him, I don't really know, besides when my dad and my mother were together. She cheated on him a lot. Even made it a joke to tell me that he wasn't my dad for a long time. That included with the cheating, which I also knew about, not even just because of my dad, but because she'd take me and my brother around the men she was cheating with. She, for whatever reason, put my brother's birth certificate saying he's white and mine under Hispanic, even though we have the same dad. Got a DNA test when I was 18, and he is my dad. I just don't look much like that side. My entire family knew she was cheating on him besides my cousins. Their mum knew. My aunt who cheated knew. My grandmother knew, etc. My dad's constantly talked about how that's messed with him. And it's been over 20 years since they divorced, and he never got into another relationship because of it. I knew my aunt was cheating from her telling me herself. The way she explained it was that she was basically only telling me because I worked with my mother and the guy she was cheating on her husband with, and didn't want me going to her husband asking him why she was there at the job but not coming to see me or my mother. The way she told me was quite literally her saying, "I love him so much. You know, we love each other a lot. We have always loved each other." She continued saying that over and over until she finally told me, "But I'm f***ing so and so. I've known him since he worked with me, and his wife knows about me. But she doesn't really care that he does stuff like this." I just left it alone. My mother basically said, not her relationship, not her place. So for 5 years, I told myself that. My aunt would also say stuff like her husband didn't really care about our family and only cared about his side. Other than that, never heard anything bad about him. But the way she made him sound, I was more or less just like, "Do you not my problem?" My grandmother died recently, and one of her biggest things she kept saying was that she was sorry to everyone for anything she did to them. Knowing her, my mother, and 2 aunts, there's a lot of secrets, lying, and manipulation. I pretty much got to the point of not wanting to carry that burden anymore. I don't really care to know more about their relationship. Honestly, I just know how she would talk about him to myself. And then the guy she cheated with started talking to my boyfriend about stuff that made it infinitely worse. It started sounding a lot less like, "Oh, he made me sad and doesn't care about me. I need someone to fill that void," to it sounding like she was flat out making a joke out of her husband. She would constantly tell me myself that he was f***ing stupid, retarded. He has a big but doesn't know how to use it. A lot of what was said to me, I could have gone without knowing or hearing. She'd also get my mother to fake bank statements to give to her husband. When I'd ask my mother why, she'd say, "Oh, because she has some credit cards he doesn't know about." Turns out she opened a lot of credit cards in his name without his knowledge and stole around 30K from him. A lot of stuff is coming to light now after telling him about it. When I did tell him, I just told him I was sorry for not saying it sooner, and I still regret not saying it sooner. Could have at least saved him a lot of time and money if I did. My cousins are usually the type that don't get into drama because it happens a lot on that side. So honestly, when I told him, at most I was thinking when I did talk to my cousins, we'd just kind of ignore everything and go about normally, because that's usually what happens when any of our mothers or aunts are arguing or anything. I honestly just thought it'd stay between the aunt and husband. But when my dad told me the aunt tried lying to the husband saying I lied, I was thinking, okay, so she's probably telling everyone that, if anything. I figured give people their space, my cousins anyway. I don't talk to my aunts or mother. I have no want or need to gossip with them or do the back and forth about the situation. I just didn't think they'd completely ignore me. OP is not an AH for exposing her aunt's cheating on and stealing money from her husband. OP did nothing wrong here, and she acted with integrity to prevent further harm to her aunt's husband. OP's fallout with her cousins is unfortunate, but it is better to stand with honesty. In fact, OP's cousins are AHs for supporting their mom who betrayed their fathers. As for scores, I would rate OP 0, OP's aunt 4, and OP's cousins 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from Sorbonne Tantrum. AITA, for refusing to share my meal with my sister after she insisted she did not want me to order any food for her. Sister is visiting at my place. I was getting delivery pasta for myself. I asked her if she wanted any, as opposed to cooking herself something. I have plenty of food at home, and she is free to use any ingredients in my fridge and cupboards. She said, "No thanks." I insisted that once I ordered food, it would be too late for her to have a last-minute craving. She insisted she did not want any pasta. I said, okay, and ordered for myself. For context, I am a big man, and I eat a lot. I got 2 servings of pasta carbonara and 1 serving of garlic bread, but it is all for me. I did not buy extra, knowing she'd want some eventually, as my sister came to assert. I got 2 plates of pasta. For me alone. Anyway, the food arrives. I start unpacking my pasta. She looks over my shoulder and comments, "It looks appetizing after all." I remind her that it's all for me, and this woman, I swear, she tells me that there's 2 plates, 2 people in the house, so naturally we should have 1 plate each, and she just grabs 1 for herself. And when I snatch the plate back, she dared to act all offended and shocked. I repeated again, "Both plates are for me because I need 2 plates to be full." She starts berating me, calling me selfish, asking how I can, in good conscience, keep 2 full plates for myself and leave nothing at all for her. I repeated that if she wanted food, she should have told me while I was ordering. I would have happily added her order on top of my 2 plates, so I could have my full meal and she could have hers. I would have paid for her meal, no questions asked. Instead, she insisted up and down that she did not want any food from DoorDash, so I ordered my order and nothing for her, so these 2 plates are mine to eat, period. She finally admitted that okay, it was wrong of her to reject my offer to buy whatever her order might have been, and she apologized, and I was ready to be done with this, but she immediately followed it with, "Welp, there's no helping it now, is there? We're not changing the past. So, since we both want food and there's 2 plates, we're getting 1 plate each, yeah?" Which annoyed me even more than if she didn't give me a performative, I was wrong snowy big bow, pretend apology before hitting me with, "Anyway, let's compromise by me having my way uncontested, and you bending over and obeying me at your own detriment for no upsides whatsoever." I put my foot down and said no. It's final. Both plates are mine. You can boil a pot of water and make yourself pasta if you're in a pasta mood. There's dry pasta in the cupboard. I took all the food into my bedroom and locked the door and ignored her trying to talk to me through the door until after I finished eating. She eventually made herself instant ramen instead. She hasn't stopped complaining and blaming me all day. AITA? Edit. Since it seems to be the one point people focus on, I do not eat exclusively pasta and garlic bread. Just because I ordered pasta and garlic bread this one time does not mean that it's the only meal I ever ingest. Several comments expressed worry about my health. Several other gave me unwanted advice like introducing meat and veggies to my diet, telling me about the consequences of too much carbs, etc. Please, do use your brain and figure out that because I have a cheat meal once does not mean that my daily diet is composed exclusively of pasta and bread. One commenter bet that I am extremely overweight. I am 6'4" and 196 pounds. I am very physically active. I absolutely love cooking and eating vegetables. My usual meal is much closer to meat, rice, and vegetables than pasta and bread. The fact I ate pasta and bread once does not automatically mean that it is the only thing I ever eat. Please understand that. Edit 2. I love my sister. I will not go no contact with her. I won't ban her from my home. I won't stop loving her because she is annoying and entitled sometimes. She is my little sister, and for how annoying she can be, I love her, and my door will always be open for her. I just vented some frustration. Please cool it down with the comments telling me to cut her out of my life, please. And most importantly, stop with the casually misogynistic sentiments. I do not blame my sister being a little brat on her gender. I blame it on her personality, and I love her regardless, so tone down the "that's just how women are." Women, Amirit, comments please. OP is not the AH because he offered to buy his sister food, but she declined. Since OP ordered for himself and communicated his intentions clearly, it's unreasonable for the sister to expect to share after rejecting the offer initially. OP's sister is being an AH here, and I would rate her 1 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets a 0. Let's now jump onto the next story from Life-Elderberry-4714. AITA for telling my sister nobody wants her here? I have 3 siblings, my older brother John, my younger brother David, and my younger sister Jessica. This whole thing started around 15 years ago when David got a girlfriend with whom he was inseparable. Maria would always be around, which annoyed John and me because we were older than them, but we eventually came to accept it. My mom loved Maria, and I used to joke that she was her favorite child. Eventually, we also got to know her, and she became part of the family. The problem started a year later, when Maria broke it off with my brother, and from what I know, it was her choice. If there were any drama or infidelity involved, I wouldn't know about it. My younger brother was heartbroken, and that night was the first time me and John took him to party with us and let him have his first experience with alcohol. He was 16 at the time. My mom and David had a couple of big fights because she was still always around after their breakup, which at the time was really funny to me. But as I got older and saw my brother be excluded from everything, I just felt like we were losing him. I have tried talking to my mom about it, but she always tells me that we are all her kids, that she invited everyone, and that it's David who refuses to come. We had a couple of fights about this, but my mom won't give in and says she is not excluding anyone. I even suggested we invite them in turns, like she comes for Christmas and he comes for New Year, but she keeps saying no. She says that she is not depriving her daughter and grandchild of spending New Year with their family because my brother is such a baby. So, I sat Maria down and tried to be honest with her. I told her that I really liked her, and maybe we could have been friends and family if the situation had been different. But I had to choose, and my relationship with my brother was more important to me. She got pretty angry, which I could understand, and told me that she only had us, and that if I expected her to tell her kids that they could not see their grandparents anymore, she would. I told her that I asked her to have no contact with them, but that I was just defining my relationship with her. I am sorry her kids don't have a lot of family, but she can't just expect me to be their uncle. She didn't accept this and started to badmouth me to anyone who would listen, how I was racist and a bad person. Some extended family believed her, but my siblings pretty quickly took my side, and she has kind of become isolated since. We didn't even go to her birthday party this year, but we got an earful from our parents like I am sorry she felt hurt and cried, but she needs to understand we don't consider her family, and move on. So it kind of came ahead of the last family dinner last week, where we, like usual, were ignoring her and went to the living room when she and our mom were talking in the kitchen. My mom eventually came out and started to scream at us again about us being bad siblings, and I kind of lost it. I told her that it's funny how she cares so much about her, while David has not been to one of these dinners in years. My sister tried to stop me, and maybe I went too far, but I told her that she needed to get it through her head that nobody wanted that woman here. So, Maria heard me and started crying as she got her stuff and left. And to be honest, I didn't care anymore. All my life, she has been weaponizing her tears against me and forcing me to have a relationship with her. That night, I told my siblings I was not coming for Christmas and that I was having it at our house with David, and they could come if they wanted to. They both were hesitant but accepted. I told my parents the same thing via text and have not answered their calls for the last few days. My mom messaged me that I should be ashamed of myself and that she was not coming or ever speaking to me again. I told her that I was not excluding anyone and that she was invited, and it was up to her to accept or not, which I know was kind of petty of me. She had blocked me and didn't even let my dad come over to watch football last weekend. My fiancé thinks I am taking this too far, but I feel like I can't sit by and do nothing anymore, as David gets left behind by his family for some random woman. Edit. Maria's child is not my brother's. I thought I said that by mentioning I was not the uncle, but people keep asking, so I added it. OP is not an AH for prioritizing her brother over her brother's ex-girlfriend and standing for her brother's well-being. Given the ignorance of OP's mom towards her brother, OP's frustration is completely justified. Not OP, rather OP's mom is an AH for her favoritism towards Maria and her daughter, so I would rate OP's mom 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets nothing. Let's now jump onto the next story from Appropriate Career 418. AITA for cutting ties with my entitled mom because she didn't apologize to my wife. I, 34M, have been with my wife, 27F, for 4.5 years, married for 1, and we had our first baby this June. My mom, 64F, and my wife have had a rocky relationship from the start. When they first met, my wife was excited and brought banana bread and pumpkin bread she baked. My mom refused to try it, mocked my wife's accent, and asked inappropriate questions about prostitution in her home country. She just overall was not interested in getting to know her, or even being cordial. My wife was devastated, but continued trying to build a relationship, getting her gifts for holidays, and always being kind. Over time, my mom made increasingly disrespectful comments, questioning if I'd need to pay goats to her father to marry her, warning me about the honeymoon phase, and saying my wife had changed me. I confronted her, and her apology was half-hearted, saying her friends thought she was funny and dismissing it as jokes. As a result, I didn't invite her to our engagement party. After 8 months, she reached out to repair the relationship, saying she'd taken a diversity training at work and realized her comments were insensitive. My wife accepted this apology, wanting to move on for my sake. After our wedding, we let our guard down and things improved, but during my wife's pregnancy, the red flags returned. When we shared the news, my mom loudly exclaimed, "I'm having a baby!" in the middle of a restaurant and repeated it again later until I corrected her. She offered to throw a baby shower, which my wife was hesitant about since her friends couldn't come, but agreed because my mom seemed so emotional about it. She checked in on my wife and me during the pregnancy, which we thought was so nice. Towards the end of my wife's pregnancy, there were some more red flags. She said her friends threw her a surprise grandma shower. She shared photos of herself wearing a sash, with gifts and a blanket with my baby's name on it. We didn't even have one yet. She did not show us any of the gifts, shared any of them with us. We had never asked her to babysit, and neither did she offer, so the grandma shower with clothes and essentials for baby felt off. Also, we never stay at her house when we visit, 5 hours away, given our history. She also began suggesting babysitting arrangements involving friends we didn't know, without asking. Against our better judgment, we invited her to the hospital. She even took the liberty to invite my brother to the hospital, to which I said no, and that he is welcome to the house. She had a fight with me and threatened not to come. My wife was 40 weeks pregnant at the time. I still didn't revoke my invitation for her to come to the hospital. Despite setting boundaries, like asking her not to kiss the baby, she ignored them. She hovered over the baby, took countless pictures, including one of my wives in her bra, which she was told not to share, kissed her hand, and then the baby's head right in front of us. She also went out of her way to sound surprised when I was talking about how cool it was that the baby was 50% my wife's nationality, as I am a lot of nationalities while my wife is 100%. Anyways, my wife had a panic attack in the bathroom during this visit. The next morning, at our house, my wife, exhausted, bleeding, and in pain, served my mom breakfast while she sat at the table. When my wife stepped away, my mom asked me if we could wake our 2-day-old baby to change him into different outfits for pictures, to which I said no. When she left, she repeatedly asked for pictures of the baby to share with her friends. It seemed to us that she cared more about the pictures than the baby's well-being. She also continued to say the baby looked like her side of the family, while continuing to dismiss my wife's contributions to his heritage. When baby was 2 months, right after his first round of vaccines, she visited again with her sisters and nieces. My wife, baby wearing as usual, said no to my mom's sister, who asked that my mom hold the baby for a picture. Pictures were a huge trigger from her initial visit, which triggered immediate tension. Regardless, when the baby woke up, my wife brought him out, and they all got around him with their phones out taking pictures. After a while, my wife took the baby to feed him, and he fell asleep again in the carrier. He had been sleeping extra because of the vaccines. They asked if the baby would be waking soon, and when we said that we weren't sure, they left to go to the movies, despite driving 5 hours to see us. A few days later, my aunt posted a picture of my baby where my wife was holding the baby, but her face was cut off. She said that the baby loved seeing his grandma and aunts and cousins, with no mention of me or my wife. I called them out publicly and privately, which led to a fight where my mom claimed my wife dislikes her and that I'm afraid of my wife. My aunt said the same so clearly they had been talking. She refused to apologize, instead saying I owed her an apology for yelling at her when I'd asked her not to touch the baby's face during the prior visit. To add some balance, my mom has done some positive things. She threw us a wedding party after our international wedding for our American relatives and friends that couldn't make it, a lot of her family, which was thoughtful and gave us $5,000 as a wedding gift. I told her that unless she takes accountability and truly apologizes, I can't allow this behavior in my family's life. This was in October. Now 2 months later, 2 weeks away from Christmas, she's been calling every day. She left one voicemail saying she's sorry for her part, and sent one text where, between other things, she said she wants to figure out what came between us. But to me, this feels insincere and like she is dodging accountability. The rest of the family has taken her side. They were cold toward us at a recent wedding. My brother was sitting next to my wife all night and did not speak to her or ask me about my family. It's heartbreaking to see my family enabling her behavior when we needed support the most as new parents. So, AITA for going no contact with my mom until she shows genuine remorse and accountability? Is my boundary too strong? I love my mom, but I refuse to allow her to hurt my wife and child again. What would you do? Edit 1. I absolutely said something when my wife was serving breakfast. My MIL was the one cooking. She is wonderful and came from abroad to spend 6 months with my wife to help with the baby. And my wife was putting the plates down. I told my wife, "What are you doing? Sit down." And she said it was okay. It was just a few plates, and she wanted me to catch up with my mom since she lives far. She has always been like that when my family visits since they live far and do not visit often. In hindsight, she says she should have been laying down, but was in a postpartum haze and sleep deprived. I pointed it out in the moment. My mom said nothing. Edit 2. My wife is from Eastern Europe. She is not from the US and came here for college. OP is not an for cutting ties with his toxic and entitled mom, who repeatedly disrespected his wife and disregarded his concerns for his baby's well-being. There is nothing wrong in protecting your wife and child from toxic environment and standing for them. Not OP. Rather, OP's mom is an AH for overstepping his wife's boundaries, so I would rate her 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets a 0. Let's now jump onto the next story from Burner2708, AITA, because I didn't say anything to my daughter for insulting our kitchen. Basically, my 45 brother and my best friend rotate hosting Sunday football. My daughter, 23, stayed the night and helped out because I was doing a brisket and because I needed help cleaning. Apparently, my girlfriend, 35, felt she insulted our kitchen in front of a few guests by saying, "Next time we're doing this at my house because this kitchen sucks." What I thought I heard was that it's too small. However, imho, both of these things are true. I hate this place we've been forced to move into during COVID because our previous landlord decided to sell our place when the market was at its worst for buyers/renters. It's half the size of our last place, but we still pay 34% more in price per square foot. We have a downstairs neighbor that calls the police on us just for walking around, where before we had a house and yard to ourselves. And it's by the goddamn railroad tracks, where before we were in a nice, quiet, walkable neighborhood. I've done what I can with our kitchen. I installed some overhead, metal shelving, and added a counter with shelves and some drawers. It still doesn't have enough counter space. There's just too much room dedicated to floor space, but not enough to add an island or anything helpful. So my response to this insult was to insult back by saying hers may be larger, but it's got this stupid, grotesquely oversized island, and then we both laughed. My daughter and I often joke by insulting each other, and we have pretty thick skin about it. My girlfriend, on the other hand, has no such thick skin. She's highly sensitive to everything my daughter says, and often mishears things from the other room in a manner that triggers us because we briefly lived under a landlord with paranoid schizophrenia. One who would often get angry at us for harassing him despite never being the subject of any of our conversations. She's angry because I didn't immediately say to my daughter that she can't insult our kitchen. Apparently, my girlfriend was riding a high of everyone complimenting what we've done with the place, and my daughter brought her back down to earth because she insulted it. Her self-confidence can't take anymore. She quite often states that my daughter is insulting her or something, while my daughter's therapist doesn't see it. Everyone else I know has glowing things to say about my daughter. No one accuses her of being rude. My girlfriend claims her friends say it all the time, but it's never about things they've experienced. They only say it in response to what my girlfriend tells them. My thing is, if my daughter was really so bad, why would my girlfriend's friends invite her to things? Why would they even want her around? Meanwhile, my girlfriend has really great friends, people that have emotional intelligence. She drops people that are toxic and has done a really good job of curating people that are worth knowing. If she didn't understand what is appropriate behavior, I don't think this would be the case. But she complains so often that I've admittedly grown tired of hearing it to the point that I both A, immediately get irritated, and B, become numb to the point that I don't even know what to consider normal behavior anymore. To further complicate things, one of my girlfriend's friends came over one time to help make and decorate Halloween cookies, and she said pretty much the same thing. Next time we're doing it at my house because this kitchen sucks. My girlfriend didn't chastise her friend the way she asked me to with my daughter. It's my kitchen. I do all the cooking. The entire thing is based on my decision making. If anyone should be insulted, it's me. Yet she never said anything to her friend, and she blames the wine. Every time I bring up how her argument is hypocritical, yes, I know that's an invalid argument, and I don't care because I'm pointing out how she moves the goalposts, she claims it's different because of some ultra-specific circumstance that absolves her of being subject to the same level of scrutiny. I'm tired of having to defend my daughter to my girlfriend every time she comes over. But I also don't want to look at her behavior through rose-colored lenses and miss some important behavioral changes. This whole thing is placing a lot of tension on my relationship with my daughter. My girlfriend will get upset that my daughter doesn't want to come over, but every time she does, she has to worry about things like this. Like, who would want to visit when they could subsequently get their phone blown up with messages about perceived slights? So AITA for responding with a humorous counter to my daughter, saying our kitchen was too small instead of chastising her like my girlfriend wanted? OP isn't an AH for not chastising his daughter, as their joking dynamic is clear. Here OP's girlfriend is being unreasonable and overdramatic, because she never reacted to comments of her friends the way she reacted to OP's daughter's comment, which shows a clear bias of OP's girlfriend towards his daughter. As for scores, I would rate OP's girlfriend 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets a 0. AITA for cutting ties with my wife's family after getting rich because they called me deadbeat and lazy when I was struggling. My early 30s wife, mid-20s, grew up in a fairly poor environment. Her grandpa had money, but her mom didn't, and her sister doesn't. My wife has an incredibly strong work ethic. She's probably more so defined as a workaholic. When I first met her, I was in trucking, making about 50K, 70K a year. Since then, I developed a niche for a specialty marketing field and became very good at it. All my friends encouraged me to go into business for myself with a marketing company. My wife was fully supportive of this, even after we discussed the financial difficulties we would have for the first year or so due to a limited budget. I made sure she knew that some months I may not get a check from the business. My salary is paid monthly. Her family, however, were not. They accused me of neglecting my family, being lazy, not wanting to work, etc. They would constantly be bringing up the fact that I didn't have a job because I was always home, working remote. She would defend me, but they would ignore it and continue to call me lazy and a deadbeat for putting my daughter in daycare while I worked from home. I was still driving a truck part-time to have steady, reliable income, but it was only half of what I was making on a good week. In the last year, however, I have grown my income from my business beyond what I was making in trucking and have very little overhead. Since we cut costs back when I first started, we realized a lot of things we were paying for we could do without or found other alternatives, and we never really added those expenses back, so it's like we have significantly more money now. I still drive a semi occasionally for a friend who owns his truck, mainly to keep my CDL active and stay knowledgeable in the industry as a fallback. Her family has taken note, and they are constantly asking to go out to eat with us, hang out with us, etc., then get mad when I never pay for the meals, the outing, the vacation, etc., aside from my part of the tab, obviously. Looking back, I understand why they never had money. They were living well beyond their means, but if it makes them happy, then it is what it is. I let my wife do whatever she wants with her money, which sometimes includes buying stuff for her family, which I support her doing with her money, if that's how she wants to spend it. But I make sure that she knows I don't want a dime of my money going to her family, since they were very unsupportive of what made us our money, and would go as far as to talk down about me for doing what lead to our money. OP is not the AH cutting of his wife's family financially. He, with the support of his wife, worked hard to build his success, and his wife's family was unsupportive during tough times. Not only this, his in-laws even belittled his efforts. So now cutting them off is understandable, and OP is doing nothing wrong in it. As for scores, I would rate OP's in-laws 3.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from No Paid Time Off. AITA for feeling resentful that my boyfriend is having trouble getting his life together? I've been with my boyfriend, 22F, 27M, for about 2 years. At the beginning of the relationship, it seemed like he was hardworking, driven, and confident. He is a musician and frequently went to studio sessions and worked with people on side gigs, etc. He always had the money he needed, and it looked like he was headed in a direction to go back to school. He borrowed money from me in the beginning, but I have a good-paying job, so I didn't think anything of it. He always told me he'd pay me back when he got the money, but rarely does unless I hold it over his head or press him on it. As the relationship progressed, he borrowed more and more money from me that now he can't pay me back for. I'll get to why later. I've known since we started dating that he's a smoker, but it went from being every couple of days to every day. I don't smoke for context. As a former addict myself, not of the same doc, I understand why he does it, but I find that he's smoking the devil's lettuce every day, even multiple times per day, and we go through this daily cycle of him needing to get stuff done, and instead smoking and hanging out with friends to procrastinate. I have told him so many times that he's probably an addict. I am very familiar with the signs, but he denies it vehemently, even though if for some reason he runs out of weed, he won't stop talking about it, and focuses only on the fact he doesn't have it until he finds it. And he always finds it. Even if he has to beg his friends, or take money from somewhere else, usually me or his best friend. On top of that, he has had some issues of infidelity, where he claims that him kissing other girls isn't as big of a deal as I'm making it into. We are both poly, and I also kiss other girls. I just don't appreciate it when he lies about it, or purposefully doesn't tell me he's seeing someone. I think he thinks I will be mad at him, even though I have told him hundreds of times that I just simply want communication and that I'd never be angry. He has trouble keeping a job and has gotten fired from at least one, while I've known him for talking shit about a coworker while his manager could overhear. To me, it seemed a bit careless. After losing his job, he stayed unemployed until I could get him a job for an adjacent company to mine, a position which he reluctantly took and complains about frequently because it's in service and therefore beneath him. After losing his job, he also lost his housing. There was a huge fight between his roommates at the time and himself that resulted in him being kicked out. He was living with a 20, 21, and 19-year-old, and they were tired of him not having money to pay bills on time. They would always get paid, albeit a couple of days late, but always before the late fee was applied. Either way, it seriously stressed them out, and none of them could have a civil conversation without screaming at each other the entire time. He was kicked out 3 months ago. He's been living in his car and staying at my house since. I've expressed to him multiple times how uncomfortable it makes me that he stays at my house because I live with a roommate who doesn't like him, and it's a very stressful home environment for me while we have to sneak around my roommate as to not make my life hell. My apartment is also about 600 square feet. No, I'm not kidding. He seems completely unmotivated to find a stable place to live because there is one piece of paperwork that he's been putting off for a month and a half that guarantees him his own solo apartment. He's always had trouble with roommates. It's worth it to say he is autistic and ADHD with pretty severe depression, and when we first met, he was medicated. After he went off medication, I could see that although he seemed much more in tune with his emotions, he's much more loving now. All that ambition, confidence, and drive went out the window. I don't want to be cruel because I try to be sensitive to his issues, but my anxiety is at an all-time high. My grades are slipping, I'm losing sleep, and I'm losing family and friends from the stress of his situation, by proxy and frankly, proximity. I've tried tough love, patience, niceness, anger, everything to help him and motivate him, but nothing seems to work. I've suggested he go back to treatment, but he can't afford it, and doesn't want to take the steps required for a sliding scale therapist or discounted medication. I know that his mental health is standing in his way, and I know he's self-medicating with the devil's lettuce to cope, but it just makes him not do anything, because he gets violently high instead. I guess I'm just asking for some advice because he has his own issues and is going through a hard time. When I express mine, he does his best to comfort me, but ultimately, it is a burden to him unintentionally. I don't think he's a bad person, but he certainly is showing patterns that make me think that a stable future is out of reach for our relationship, and I really want marriage and a family someday. I love him and want to wait for him and have patience for him, but I am so angry at him most of the time just because I support him all the time with no complaints, let him sleep at my house, compromise my morals for his sake, defend him to my family and friends, feed him, take care of his cats, etc. And it seems like he just takes all that for granted and stretches everything I give him as far as it could possibly go. I'm getting to the point where I can't be nice anymore. I feel neglected and used, and that I'm being walked all over, which is what my friends and family say to me, even though I try to defend him. Again, this is the one side of him I have a huge problem with, but if you met him in real life, you'd love him. He's funny, charming, charismatic, and loving. Everyone who meets him loves him. Even my friends who didn't like him in the beginning admitted to me after meeting him, what a cool dude he is. I just wish I didn't feel this way, and that there was a way for me to support him in a way that he needs without feeling taken advantage of. I would certainly want someone to stay with me through hard times. I didn't have anyone when I was an addict and lived out of my car for 6 months when I was 17. I want to stay with him and love him. So, am I the... I just want things to change and get better. OP is not an AH for feeling frustrated in her relationship with her boyfriend. Her boyfriend is an AH for taking advantage of her both emotionally and financially. OP's concern is valid. So, I would rate OP's boyfriend 2.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from Guardian of the Groot. AITA after breaking up with my partner for being friends with our coworker. I, F29, started a new job as a school custodian almost a year ago and met R, M65. Big age gap, I know. We started dating about 3 months after I was hired after bonding over collecting cards. We also have a coworker, P, F56, that R used to hang out with outside of work, as well as P's husband, but they no longer hang out together. R has had issues with P's behavior before, and this is what caused him to stop hanging out with her and her husband, although he says P and her husband are still good friends. This was all long before I ever met any of them. I have had a lot of issues myself with P the past few months, as she has a terrible attitude problem and is a bully. There is a lot of backstories here with P. During the summer, she came at my coworker yelling and screaming at her about moving furniture into a new teacher's classroom. I mean, absolutely screaming. I had already had issues with her attitude in the past and couldn't take it any longer. I told her she needed to watch the way she was talking to us, and a screaming match ensued. She then called our boss playing victim because I gave her a taste of her own medicine. She lied about me and said that I called her a bitch and kept screaming it down the hallway. Never once did that word come out of my mouth. We all got in trouble, verbal warning. And that made me extremely angry because I was defending myself and my friend, co-worker from P's outburst. Well, the day after this occurred, R thought it would be funny to prank P, even though she screamed and yelled at me. His girlfriend lied about me and got me into trouble. I was very upset by this, because why would you be friendly with someone who treats your girlfriend that way? He kept pranking her and stuff, no matter how many times I said it hurt me, because obviously he didn't care what she did to me. I kept telling him he only needed to be cordial with her and only talk to her the bare minimum about work stuff. He didn't need to go out of his way to be friends with her, or prank her, or anything like that. I would think any normal partner would have a huge issue with the person who treats their girlfriend like. Finally, after months of this, he finally said he would stop pranking her, but I had no trust in him. We argued about this a lot, and he straight up said he didn't care what P does to me. He's even defended her and said that I was at fault for the situation. I hate P so much that now when I pass her in the halls, I don't even look in her direction. I don't acknowledge her existence whatsoever. Fast forward to about a month ago, and my boss is telling me I need to have a meeting with her and HR for something that I did. I couldn't think of a single thing I had done wrong. Come to find out, P tells R that she reported me because I called her a and that another coworker was right there and heard me say it. When R tells me about this, I'm just completely taken aback, as I don't even look at her when I go by her in the hallway. Why would I randomly say that to her for no reason at all and risk my job? R said he didn't believe I would do that, and that when P told him this, it went in one ear and right out the other. I said she is lying, making up stories, and trying to get me fired. And as soon as she told R this story, that he should have said, "You're lying? That never happened. Don't ever talk to me again. I don't like the way you treat my girlfriend." But of course he would never do that. I even brought up how friendly he was being with her one night, walking out of work with her, and he told me I was such a baby about it, and that he wasn't going to change what he was doing. I told him right then and there, as far as I'm concerned, you right off. So anyway, I go to this meeting with my boss, HR, and my union reps, and they pull up the camera footage. It literally shows me walking past P in the hall and not even looking her way, nor do I ever turn around to see her reaction after I supposedly called her a Additionally, the camera footage proved her entire story was a lie because the coworker she claimed was right there and heard it was way at the other end of the hallway. This coworker even emailed our boss and told her she didn't hear me say anything to P. So, P completely made up this story in an attempt to get me fired. A few days after this happened, while taking care of something at work in a classroom, R was trying to kiss me. At this point, we had already been broken up for about 3 weeks to a month. I wasn't having it and told him I didn't want to kiss him because we were far from okay. He said he wasn't going to change what he was doing with P and that he was going to be friends with her. I told him I can't be with someone who doesn't care about me and is okay with all the things P does to me. He said, "She doesn't do anything to you." And I said, "There it is. You do nothing but defend her. You defend everyone except for me. I've tolerated your disrespect long enough. It's pretty for you to be friends with someone who does all this to me." R said, "No, it's not." I said, "Yes, it is. It's up and it's disrespectful. I can't control what you do, but I can control me, and I've tolerated your disrespect for long enough." We said, "Have a nice life" to each other and walked away. I will not be with someone who cares so little about how another person treats me that he would be friends with that person. So AITA for breaking up with him? OP is not an AH for breaking up with her boyfriend. OP's boyfriend is an AH for being unfaithful in their relationship. OP made the right decision by setting boundaries with her toxic boyfriend. She did nothing wrong. So I would rate OP 0 out of 5 and OP's boyfriend 2.5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from AITA or OMC guess. AITA for being upset at a friend's response to things not working out with a guy. When I, 24 at the time, was speaking with a friend, Dave, 20, he told me that there was a really cute guy, Tim, 20. I started speaking with this guy, and we started flirting, and as this happened, I went to my best friend Bella, non-binary, transfemme 26, to just gush over how cute Tim is and tell them about the flirting and such. Bella was a bit taken aback as they had been flirting with this person also, but said that they would back off, not because I asked, because we would make a cute couple. This made sense to me, as Bella was a lot more active in our southern podunk town and just wanted hookups. Meanwhile, I've always been more relationship-oriented. So fast forward through the dates and group hangouts we had with the guy Tim staying the night at my place, 3 weekends in a row. And on that final weekend, I asked him if he would be my boyfriend officially, but I understand if he wants to take his time to answer, as he was still kind of figuring out his sex, and that I would wait a week/month/ even 2, as long as we continued to spend time together, that I would wait for him because his figuring out of himself should be on his timeline, not mine, and not rushed. He then started crying, telling me I'm very sweet, but that he can't do this anymore because he's getting attached to me and he's had a plan for his life, and that at 25, he wants to sell off all his things and live like a nomad. To which I replied that if we got to that point, he is free to do that, and I wouldn't be mad because I know what I signed up for, but that we all have plans for what we wanted in our lives, but it doesn't hardly ever really work out that way. So then Tim apologizes, saying he's and he's sorry about this, and he would like to go home. I tried to console him and tell him he's not that I understand, and I'm sorry I brought it up, that I just had a lot of affection for him and wanted him to know I was ready and would wait. Anywho, I was taking him home, and something flipped on the very silent, awkward drive home, where I said, "You know what? You are an Then he told me to stop the car, and he would just walk the rest of the way. We weren't far from his house. I slowed down, and he got out, and I tried to get him back in the car and let me just take him home, but he wouldn't. So I got home. I wanted to tell my best friend about what happened, as we basically shared everything with each other. The conversation receipts are still available in FB Messenger. Me, Whelpits. Bella, what is? Me. I asked him out because things were super good. I told him that I didn't expect an answer right then. It could be a week, month, year. IDC just wanted to lay it out. At first he was like, oh, it's going to be a year or so. And I added maybe 2 and told him I'd wait IDC. Then he told me that his plans were basically being ruined because he wanted to lose his virginity to someone who doesn't care because he'll feel too shackled to that person to ever leave. And I called him out on it and told him that it's all in frame of mind. It can be a blessing and a curse. It could be a chain and shackle or a strong spiritual link to that person. Then he brought up how he just had to be certain of the person. Then it became he wants to move at the age of 25 and sell all his stuff and live off the grid. And I told him I wouldn't stop him from that. That's a while away. And he said he'd end up stopping himself. And that was his final straw. He refuses to be in another relationship because that's his life plan, and he won't do anything to jeopardize it. And he called himself an ass. I said, no, don't. Then on the way home, I flipped sides and saw that he actually is being if that's the plan, because even mess with me. So I told him, I just realized you were right. You are an and explained. Then he asked to get out and walk home. I turned around and tried talking to him, but too many cars behind me. I messaged him when I got home, telling him that I didn't want it to end in a fight either. Bella, why the Sigh, I'm sorry. Me, yup, you should check if you're blocked too. Bella, why would I be blocked? Me, IDK, he might have blocked people associated with. Bella, no, I'm not. I wish you would have just been patient and let things happen. Maybe things would have turned out different. Me, are you serious right now? Bella, I told him that I didn't want an answer right now, that he could respond in a week, a month or 2, or a year or 2. Never mind. Bella, please don't cuss at me for trying to say something to make you feel better. Me, I'm not f***ing this. No bye. Bella, yeah, you shouldn't. Me, I'm headed out. So this was the exchange between me and my best friend, who I had done so much for. I understand I might be TA because I was in emotional turmoil and just wanted some comfort from my friend. And at first that's what I received. But I feel like they felt a certain way about how things went down because they were also barking up that tree at the start, and the response of, I wish you would have just been patient and let things happen. Maybe things would have turned out different. Really messed me up. I already play through the what ifs and what could have been in my head, and I did not need that. I was head over heels for this guy. As a result, Bella outcasted me and told a whole different story to the friend group. And I was ostracized by all of them, even Bella's parents on FB tagging me in statuses and such. I was really close with their family and had even lived with them for a time. Then later that night, something worse happened to me, but unrelated. The only time people from that friend group would come and hang out with me is when they were on bad terms with Bella. And then, as soon as they made up, I would be forgotten again. This was years ago, like 2016. So if y'all want to know what happened after all this, I'll update it when needed. MITA for how I reacted? OP is not an AH for feeling upset at his best friend's comment. OP's friend is an AH for making hurtful comments about OP. OP did nothing wrong, and his reaction is completely justified. So, I would rate OP's friend 2.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from Racing for Life 5278. AITA for stressing my boyfriend out? I, 17F, am dating, 19M. Let's call him Greg for this. Greg and I have been dating for almost 5 months now, and it's had its goods and bads, mostly bads. Greg has a history of being cheated on, and believed I would too. Before him and I started dating, I had approximately 6 guy friends who I hung out with weekly. I live out in the country and like trucks, so it's easier to talk to them than girls. Anyways, when we started dating, Greg and his buddies took my phone and blocked them all. Normally I wouldn't care and would have blocked them for him, but there were 2 issues. 1, they were my only friends at the time and my only support system, and 2, he came off in such a rude manner about it, telling me that all they wanted to do was me. I kindly explained to him that most of them had girlfriends, and the one that did try to get with me, I immediately turned down, and he dropped it completely. I also told him that I felt he should at least try to meet them and see how he felt first. Instead, he sent them all a text asking to hook up, and they all said no. He still felt fishy about it since I was fighting to keep them so hard. I told him that he has lots of female friends, and he is still in contact with his ex. She is a single mother taking care of a toddler. The dad is a deadbeat dating his other ex, and he helps out sometimes, which I was perfectly fine with. But he just brushed me off. I have a hard time with abandonment and tend to leave a relationship when it gets scary. Every time he fought for us to stay together, and it really showed me how much I meant to him. I also have a problem with yelling. He found out when his buddy and his girlfriend were arguing in the back seat. It was a bad situation, but he noticed and helped me out the best he could. The reason I'm bringing this is that he tends to get mad quickly and resorts to yelling to get the point across. I then end up crying even if it's my fault, and it makes me feel even for putting him in a situation like that. Anyways, fast forward a bit, and we had been a little distant with a lot of minor fights and tension. This started because he would do or say things with his buddies that hurt me, and the one time I brought it up to him, I got brushed off, so I stopped talking about my feelings altogether. Now, to this past weekend, I got a call at 1 a.m. from him. He got knocked out by a buddy while they were drunk, and he couldn't see out of his right eye and had a massive headache. He asked if I could come over and help him. The problem is that I have big parents, and I don't have my own vehicle right now, as I'm planning to fix it this week. We also live about an hour away from each other, so I got that my mom didn't want me driving over at 1 a.m. We ended up getting one of his other buddies, let's call Rue. Rue is a great guy, but when him and Greg are around each other, some hurtful things can be said. This is also the case with Rue's younger brother, who is less of a great guy, but still a good friend of my boyfriend. I ended up going over there the next day and spent the day laying alone in his bed as he was in the ER, and his buddy and his girlfriend were already with him, and I'm not on the best of terms with them. He eventually got home, and we went to bed. Then the next day, we ended up going to another ER about 2 hours away. I obviously went, and Rue decided to come along. I do get along with him. My main problem is what he said in the ER. We were about to get discharged, and they were talking about Rue's girlfriend. I chimed in a little bit, and said that some of that stuff was weird of her to do. They then started bragging about their sex lives. My boyfriend knows a little bit about my history, but not a lot because there are things I'll probably never tell anyone. But I almost started crying when Greg was mentioning things we did in bed. I would call them embarrassing, mostly just stuff girls don't want talked about. There was also a joke made of me being stretched. Sorry, I know it's weird to say, but I feel it's important to this. I know it's not true, and Greg always talks to me basically loving how I'm the opposite of that, so it hurt and confused me at the same time. In all, the trip was fun, and I got over it, and we went home. I ended up coming back to my place to take care of my animals and get ready for some appointments I had. I spent that time thinking about everything he said to or around me that made me feel like I have bad communication and have no clue how to bring it up to him. Fast forward to today, he was supposed to come over later in the afternoon so I could help watch him and get him anything if he needed it. He ended up spending the day with his friends and forgot to tell me he wasn't coming. I was hurt, and I ended up being cold to him. There's no excuse for that. I was aware of what I was doing. I then started feeling sick and remembered I forgot to put my birth control back in. I'm not explaining that LOL, and decided to take a test. I should also mention that I have miscarried before, and I didn't even know I was pregnant due to 2 negative tests. I decided to do some research today and found out that my thyroid disease is what is causing the negative tests. I decided to text him, basically just asking what kind of headspace he was in so I wouldn't tell him when he was already stressing. He kind of went off that he was going through it, and me being earlier did not help his case. He said that he told me that he had stuff going on today. He had to talk to a cop for a report via his concussion, and it confused me. In my head, all he had was that and coming to see me. I then wrote a paragraph basically apologizing for being a and told him that we should probably have a sit-down talk together. It started stressing him out because I have left him in the past, and I assured him I wouldn't leave, but that I wanted us to have a space to come to each other. He told me that his friends were his safe space, and it kind of hit hard, especially since he took away my safe space, my friends. I also ended up telling him I thought I might be pregnant, and he said we would figure it out if I was. I still don't feel like we're going to end up talking about our communication issues. I also want to talk to him about everything he's made me feel, without making him feel like I'm attacking him, but I don't know how to get him to see my side. Thank you for taking the time to read this. OP is not an AH for having trust issues with her boyfriend. OP's boyfriend is an AH for always hurting and stressing OP with his behavior. OP's reaction is completely right. She did nothing wrong. So I would rate OP's boyfriend 2.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from dry-effort-7658. AITA, my brother caused half of my business to quit on me. I, 30M, started a recruiting business this year. I built a business between 2021 and 2023 in a separate industry that I sold last year for a good chunk of money. Not enough to retire over, but enough to buy a home, a car, a Rolex, and have a comfortable sub-$1 million amount after all that and taxes. I refused to hire my brother at the last business I started because my fear was, what if I have to fire him? And I didn't want that situation to even be possible. This time around, my brother was begging me to bring him on board. I stressed, this might not even work. I don't want you to quit your job just to come here and have this fail. But he assured me that he understood the risk and he believed in me and in himself and he wanted to do it. So, I hired him in June, paid him $5,000 for the first 3 months, after which he transitioned to a $30,000 a year salary. Commission was very high, approximately 40%, and I gave him a 10% stake in the business, as long as he stayed for 6 months. I was happy and proud of what we were doing. We built ourselves up to a team of 5, and we started catching traction pretty fast. Within 3 months, we'd brought on 8 clients. Morale was high. I bought everyone branded shirts and hats and golf balls, took everyone out to golf once or twice a month over the weekend. Even bought these cool Seiko watches with our logo on the dial to commemorate our first revenue ever in Q3 2023. I've spent almost $150,000 on building this business between the salaries, the software we used, the co-working space I rented, the events we attended, furnishing the office, etc. But something started changing in October. The guys were refusing to make cold calls. They were becoming insubordinate. They were talking things like, time to make risk my risk some money, guys. Just flat out disrespect. Especially considering I am in the negative over $100,000 still, and have not pulled a cent out of the company. On the contrary, I was literally paying them out of my own bank account, supporting them until they were to start making money for the business, when they would earn approximately 30% to 40% commission. It reached a climax 2 weeks ago. My brother's client had a $20,000 invoice due that day. In the morning, I let him know, hey, your client hasn't paid their invoice yet. Can you call your contact and make sure that gets done today? To which he flat out refused to call them. It was ridiculous. I told them 2 days ago it'd be due today. They know. They're not even late yet. Why are you asking me to call them? Honestly, unbelievable things. It's pretty standard to call people who owe you money to make sure they, 1, know it's due today, 2, know how to pay it, and 3, find out if they will pay it that day. But he continued defying me in front of everyone. I walked out, frustrated as hell and feeling extremely disrespected. We needed that money to pay payroll and rent 10 days after it was due, and he just refused to call his client. Spoiler alert, they didn't pay it on time. I had to once again transfer my own money into the business to make sure it all got paid. On top of the financial disrespect, he openly defied me, the boss, in front of the entire team. I expressed to the team that I felt disrespected by what my brother did, and that going forward, when I asked the guys to do something, I expect it to be done, or there would be consequences. To which my brother launched a full-stage coup d'etat. He tried to push me out of the business. Openly again, in writing on Microsoft Teams, he, in a lot more words, basically said he wouldn't do anything I say, and that I was threatening him, and that I don't respect them. It upset me a lot. I called a meeting the next day, and it devolved into a yelling match between my brother and I after he continued gaslighting me and disrespecting me. That same day, one guy quit. Few days later, another guy quit. And today, my brother quit. Ironically, he quit the day after he got paid commission for that invoice, nearly $10,000. It's now down to me and another guy who was supportive of me through the whole ordeal. The whole situation upset me, but my brother is now running a full-stage smear campaign. He got our mom on his side quickly. She is very controlling, and I am not one to let her control me easily, so she is always excited at any chance she gets to speak badly about me. I know it's bad because my father, my mom and dad have been divorced for almost 30 years, was telling me that my mother was calling him, as well as my brother, about everything. They are trying to convince him that I am a drug addict. I am not. I take prescription Adderall. I find that rich coming from a woman who drinks every single night. Trying to convince him that I have no control over myself. Trying to convince him that I need to seek professional help for my rage. My dad seems to be more on my side, but who knows how long that will last. And he is very anti-Adderall, so he's using the opportunity to push that on me. Am I? My mom and brother would love for me to believe I am. OP is not an AH for feeling disrespected by his brother and family. OP's brother is an AH for disrespecting OP in the workplace. OP's parents are also AHs for not supporting OP in this situation. So, I would rate OP's brother 2, OP's parents 2.5, and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. AITA for wearing a bikini on a family trip. Despite my conservative mother-in-law's complaints, I, 34, FM, married to my husband, 33M, and have a great marriage so far. This week we went to a trip with my husband's family to Hawaii. The trip included his parents, his 2 brothers and their wives, his 2 sisters and their husbands, and us both. My husband is the youngest, and all of his siblings have kids ranging from 2 years to 12 years. We all paid for our own flight tickets and hotel rooms. We arrived late last night, briefly caught up with everyone, and went straight to B. The next day we had breakfast, and went to the beach afterwards. I was wearing a sundress and a bikini underneath, for when we went to the beach afterwards. A little background, I have a pretty average body type, and have been wearing bikinis all my life. The ones I got for this trip were pretty standard ones with good coverage. Think about a triangle bra type top, and a cheeky bikini briefs bottoms. I'm not talking about a micro top and thongs that barely covers anything. I know what's appropriate to wear for a family vacation. Anyways, when the time came to go into the waters, I took off my sundress and went for a swim. I then helped my niece and nephews make sandcastles. Overall, everyone had a great time. While going back to our rooms, my mother-in-law pulled me aside and told me how disrespectful and disgusting it is that I chose to wear a bikini for a family vacation, which included toddlers and teenagers, and not to mention other males. She also singled me out by saying that out of all the other females of my age on the trip, husband's 2 sisters and 2 sisters-in-law, how I was the only one who wore an inappropriate swimsuit while the other females wore a one-piece swimsuit. She said there was a Target right outside our hotel, and I should buy some modest swimsuits suitable for the occasion. I politely declined and told her that while I appreciate her thoughts, the swimsuits I have are modest and won't be needing more. When I told this to my husband, he said he respects my choice of clothes, and he didn't feel my bikini was inappropriate. But he feels that I should get a few one-piece swimsuits with more coverage just to keep the peace. I feel otherwise. AITA? Edit. Since many of you asked what swimsuit I was wearing, I've added it in the comments. Edit 2. Thank you for all your support and responses. Let me clear out a few things that was pointed out in the comments. 1. My husband fully supports my choice of clothes and my opinions. The only reason he said to keep the peace is because this is the first time since COVID that the entire extended family is on a vacation together, and we don't want to spoil it for everyone by making a scene with MIL. He did say he will step in to defend me if this is brought up again. 2. I told one of the sister-in-law who I am close with about this incident, and she said the same thing as most of you. There is nothing wrong with that bikini. She said the only reason she wears one-piece swimsuits is because postpartum ruined her belly. If not, Sho would have worn a 2-piece suit too. 3. While many of you suggested to buy a skimpy revealing bikini to show my MIL what an inappropriate bikini truly is, I'm not going to do that. But some of the comments were hilarious. Here's what I am going to do. I'm going to continue to wear bikinis on this vacation, I don't have anything else, and wear a cover-up when I'm not in the water. And I will have a conversation with my mother-in-law about this topic, only if she brings up this issue again. OP is not an AH for wearing a modest bikini that she feels comfortable in. And when her husband also supports her choice, she did nothing wrong here, so she is not an AH, and I would rate OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. As for OP's mother-in-law, her comments are unreasonable, and she is trying to overstep OP's boundaries. So, I would rate her 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from Minahaldien. AITA for wanting an apology after my sister sent me into a hysterical breakdown. I, 24, lived with my mum my whole life and a sane human being, she's 20, lived with my dad her whole life and it incredibly disrespectful to everyone. 2 weeks ago, I stayed over at my dad's for one night. We have recently got back in contact after not speaking for 10 years due to parents divorcing. We had breakfast. My dad went to work, and I stayed home with my sister to work and chill with her. After a couple hours, I said I'm going to go home in about an hour's time because I have things to do. I'll probably get an Uber because I don't want to interrupt my dad's day. I hate feeling like a burden, plus it's a new relationship, and I recently lost my car because of an accident. My sister started saying, "Tell my dad he'll take you." I said I'll get an Uber or a bus. I have pre-bought tickets that need using. Plus it was Friday prayer time. I don't want to disrupt that. Then she started swearing at me and being rude, saying it's your dad's house. Let him take you home. He never gets to spend time with you. I didn't tell him to not speak to me for 10 years, LOL. I got pretty upset and said, well, he didn't speak to me for years. What would you expect? To be fair, I'm really busy. I work 2 jobs and I'm newly married and juggle my life and family visits, etc. It's a lot, and I'm still at university. My sister, on the other hand, does nothing. I then proceed to grab my work laptop and go upstairs into my bedroom and start crying and texting my older sister and husband about how she just lashed out at me. A few minutes pass, and I could hear her downstairs. I think she was voice noting Dad. And then after a few minutes, I heard my dad downstairs. Then he came up and I was crying, and he hugged me and asked me, "Why are you crying?" So I was like, "Because she's always so mean to me, and all I do is try to be a good sister to her." And then Dad was like, "Let's go downstairs and have a chit chat." And I was like, I just want to go home." And then he heard the door downstairs move. So he called her, and she came up and into the room and was like, "Why are you crying?" and started shouting the same stuff that happened downstairs. My dad was trying to tell her to stop saying the same things because we're trying to forget about it. And then I was like, "It's not a big deal, but you were mean to me since I've been here, and it's just not nice." And then she started shouting at my dad and blaming him, saying, "This is the same thing I said to you last week, double standards." And I was crying and like, "It's not fair how you're shouting at me, and now you're shouting at him." She believes that he goes out of his way for me and my older sister. And then she was really started to shout at me in my face, and I couldn't take it. So I stood up and told her to stop shouting at me. Like I went in her face and screamed it. Because I really can't take that stuff after I've been through a lot recently with my mum's side of the family, who I had to cut off because it was so toxic. I felt suffocated. My dad was holding one of my arms, and I immediately fell back on the bed and started dry puking because I was crying so much. I was hysterical. I've never been in such a bad state. All I wanted was to go home at that point. She continued shouting, and then she went into her room and was like, "I'm leaving. Keep her. Keep your daughters," slammed the doors and everything, and kept coming in and out, and my dad was like, "Shut up. Stop saying things," and she still carried on. I was holding my ears and head and crying and repeatedly saying, "I want to go home." And she was screaming in her room, "Keep your daughters, blah blah." Then I calmed down and said to Dad, "I'm going to get ready and go home," and he apologized, and I was saying, "It's not a big problem. It's just the explosiveness is too much for something that was not a big thing to cause an issue or this much commotion over." I left the room to avoid anything growing, and he was saying, "I'm sorry," and I was like, "She'll be fine, but it's just the explosiveness." So then he went to her room and she was like, "Get out, get out, get out." I packed up my things and got my Uber, exactly like I said I would, and went home. I cried on the entire journey home, and for hours when I got home, and even more when my husband got home. I was so upset and hurt. Prior to this, the day before, I had given her so many early Christmas gifts and even made her a custom advent calendar, all by myself, with things I picked just for her. And I've tried over the last 6 months, she's been in my life to really be the big sister and include her in everything we possibly can. And this was the thanks I got for it. LOL. My dad, I saw him last week and this weekend. He's apologetic and says she's always been like this. She's never changed. I guess it's different when you're dealing with one volatile person, but then to put others who are new in your life into the crossfire, it's really difficult. My sister has not approached me, so I sent her this message a couple of days ago. She showed it to my dad and did not reply to me. He said he will talk to me when he sees me. It basically said, "I did nothing to hurt you. I've never had an argument like this with my other siblings or mum before. We're clearly very different people, and that's fine. any opportunity you gave me to be a sister. I did what I could for you, and I feel underappreciated. You need to understand you hurt and upset me. I hope you've had time to think. You said you didn't want to lose me. But what you did, where does that leave your statement? And said, hope you're okay. I asked Dad and my older sister how you are because it didn't feel right to check in with you. Like I said, she hasn't responded. My sister, older one, and husband think my message was perfectly fine, but clearly the 20-year-old doesn't think so. I'm writing this because I've just found out she's sold quite a lot of the things I've given her over the last year or so, including a Miffy teddy that cost me like €60 in Amsterdam, and everything I got her for Christmas, including the gifts she got me, that I left there when I left that day in a hurry. She's also selling the dress she bought to wear at my wedding. AITA, or what the heck did I do wrong? That I'm the one getting all the shit and being told to be a bigger person, when I actually think I did nothing wrong? OP is not an AH, her sister is an AH for shouting at OP and blaming her. She was very aggressive and rude towards OP. OP did nothing wrong. Her inquiry is completely justified, so I would rate OP's sister 1.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from national_quail_9565. AITA for losing my temper to a narcissist at work. I, 30F, have a job in a small mom-pop type business and work directly under work mom. I have had my job for over 3 years, and my job roles have increased and changed over the years. Recently, I have taken a larger role in event management at the shop and do a lot of the behind-the-scenes coordination. Back in April, the business introduced publicly a new face without introducing us. His role, 35M, is that he basically shows up to the events, drinks, and mingles, and then moderates guest talks. He technically isn't even an employee. He just became friends with work mom and suddenly is everywhere. I've been a little weary of him since he came into the picture because he makes a big impression on work mom and the decisions that the business makes, including financial decisions. But I have been professional, pleasant, and try to reach out to collaborate. Over the past several months, because we are just starting December, most of my emails to him are ignored. He holds information I need to do my job. When he does message me, it is after he had a private meeting with work mom, and he is delegating my work. Usually when we talk in person, he is more interested in his drink or phone than trying to get to know me. I even brought up my concerns at one point on the phone to work mom, saying he was stepping on my toes, since I actually get paid to do a specific job, and that I didn't think he was a team player. My concerns were dismissed, and boss praises him to everyone she meets. Long story long of holding my breath at work, last week things took a really negative turn. In a group chat with the three of us, he puts up a message to self-praise his accomplishments at what a good job he is doing. He has continued to hold on to info. I need to do my job, so I message that it is really important for information to be properly documented. He proceeds to call me and work mom to berate me on how I never have a nice thing to say to him, how I need to reframe my way of thinking by comparing my messages to his. Also says he used to work for a mental health clinic and I need to work on having a more positive demeanor. That I don't ever say he's done a good job. Gives examples of how he compliments me at events, but I don't compliment him, etc. I regret that I lost my temper in the phone call, but I defended myself saying I have never been unprofessional. He has never tried to have a conversation with me, and when he does it is condescending. He is not my boss, but tries to tell me how to do my job, and delegates me work. That him sharing examples of how he compliments me is actually just him complimenting himself, and that my ability to do my job is not dependent on giving him compliments. I hung up on the call before I could say I quit or make things worse. Because I was so mad, I said I didn't want to work with him anymore. The phone call lasted a total of 7 minutes, and work mom never intervened. A little later, she called me and said she was shocked I felt that way towards him. I brought up that I told her months ago there were concerns. She moved on to work-related talk and never followed up with me on the matter. Now comes today, we are discussing an upcoming event, and I am relaying all the info I am still missing. I ask when the next meeting will be scheduled for the event, and she says I don't need to be on it since I didn't want to be on video calls with him. I replied that I didn't want to be on calls alone with him, but as long as there were mediators, I would be okay with it. I said, honestly, I am still shocked by how unprofessional that phone call was and how it disrupted our workday, and stated that my ability to do my job is not dependent on stroking his ego. She said that call was really bad, on both sides, and that she was sad we didn't get along, but she made the decision to keep us separate. But we both had valid feelings, and he is doing a lot for this event. So, I am sidelined on meetings that he can still attend. He is just currently her bestie, and it feels like he has her sympathy playing the victim, when really as my manager she should have at least tried to see my perspective of being ambushed, and try to reach out to me regarding the work environment. Yet, I'm expected to still do my job without information, and potentially bust my working the event while he drinks and mingles. AITA for standing up for myself, because at this point, I am thinking I will quit before the event. I just don't feel like I can trust her anymore to prevent this toxic work environment to continue. OP is not an AH for prioritizing her well-being over a new person in the workplace. The new person is an AH for creating a toxic environment and questioning OP's work. OP's concern is 100% valid. She did nothing wrong. So, I would rate the new person 1.5 out of 5. And OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from plenty_attitude_35. AITA. For breaking off a friendship over a broken promise? I'm a high school student who has been in the same school since it opened, which was also my PK3 year. At the start, this school has always felt like a family, and faculty has always cared a lot about students' well-being, not only physically or in terms of grades, but also mentally. In the past 4 or 5 years, the school has had many significant faculty changes, and is now not what it used to be. Teachers and other faculty simply don't care about you or how you are doing. I have experienced this firsthand when I reached out for emotional help because my grades were low, even though I was trying my best, only to be met with "try harder" or "everyone is doing just as bad," etc. I have struggled significantly with mental health as a result of school, and they are well aware of this. I am now in my year 11, and this year has been going terribly for me. I had multiple breakdowns, almost relapsing, and overall a terrible time. I made the difficult decision to leave the school and move to a less content-heavy program, which is online. This wasn't easy as I was scared I wouldn't see my friends as often and really did like the social aspect of school. But if I stayed in that school, I would have ended up dead, literally. Now, I had not told anyone the news. All my friends and teachers were in the dark about why I was absent and what I was planning. This is because I did not want the school to be able to prepare for me leaving or hear about it from students. I wanted the school to hear it from me and have my turn to say everything I needed to say. Now I have 2 best friends. Let's call them BSF1 and BSF2. BSF1 has been my best friend since 3rd grade and wouldn't hurt a fly. She is the sweetest and most caring person I have ever met. On the other hand, BSF2 has a few issues. She has always been loyal to me and a good friend, but she can be manipulative, and I have to have strong boundaries with her, as she is also very self-centered. Thus far, I haven't had any issues with her that have to do with my trust towards her. I shared my issues with school with both of them, and eventually, I told BSF1 what I was going to do. I asked her not to say anything to anyone, as this was very personal and a big deal to me. She agreed and heard me out about my problems and everything related to this. She gave me her word, and I believed her, of course. Now, BSF2 had been bugging me about not going to school, and I had told her multiple times to leave it alone and stop pressuring for answers. I told her I was doing okay mentally, and it wasn't because of that. BSF2 started bothering BSF1 about it, saying how she was so worried, etc., because she knew she wouldn't get answers from me. BSF1 didn't say anything to her. Of course, she is a sweetheart. But she did tell me that BSF2 was very worried, and whatever. She told me that she is someone you can count on and whatever. I wasn't planning on telling BSF2 at all, but BSF1 convinced me to. She didn't do it pushing or whatever, but after all the things she said to me, I decided to take the plunge and just trust my friend. For context, I have many trust issues with people, and I was thinking that it would be a good thing to do for myself and my issues. When I told BSF2 about it, I almost immediately regretted it. BSF2 started going on about how I could do this to her, and if I needed help academically, she could always help me. We have one class together, and she always distracted me in it, basically making the whole thing about her. She said that she also struggled in school, and this was apparently a reason for me to stay. I told her there is nothing she can say or do to change my mind, and that it is final. I asked her to please not tell anyone, and only my mother, my sister, and BSF1 knew about the situation. I told her how I didn't want the school to hear about it from anyone else but me. That was 2 weeks ago. This week, I got a text asking me if I was leaving school and moving to an online program. I was furious. This was not someone I had discussed that information with, and there was no way for her to know such details unless BSF1 or BSF2 said anything. BSF1, I knew, would never give me her word and then go back on it, and I had a sinking feeling that it was BSF2. I talked to more people, and everyone's answers were that BSF2 had told them. Here comes the kicker. I confronted BSF2 with a simple message asking if she told anyone. She said no. I asked her again, but now giving the evidence I had and how either it was her who said it or BSF1. In these messages, she didn't even fully admit to it by saying, yes, I did that, but instead went on to tell her side of the story, which goes as follows. My friends in school and teachers were asking her again and again, time after time, why I wasn't coming to school, and the pressure of it all was too much. So I told them, maybe she is leaving the school. These are my words, not hers, but I do have screenshots of a longer message which says this. Reading this was baffling to me. I really didn't know what to say, but I never really said anything hurtful. Now, BSF2 has convinced BSF1 to basically tell me that it's not a big deal, and that it was justified to tell teachers about it since they needed to know where I was. Keep in mind, no teacher in that school ever reached out to me or to my mother. I decided to cut off BSF2 after trying to talk to her and get her to understand and getting nowhere. On top of that, I am beyond furious that she would put so much pressure on BSF1 to get involved, and that she has manipulated her into believing whatever twisted side of the story she has. Am I the AH? OP is not an AH for cutting off her toxic best friend too. OP's best friend too is an AH for breaking the promise she made with OP. OP's reaction is completely justified. She did nothing wrong. So, I would rate OP's best friend to 3.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from Whipped. I just spent 10 days in Thailand with a girl that's a friend. I think I blew my chances at becoming anything more. I, 29M, just arrived back home after a 10-day holiday in Thailand with a lovely European woman. We'll call her Clara, 26F. Clara and I have known each other for a few years now and have had a connection since we first met each other while working for about 5 months in the rural northwest of WA, Western Australia. Literally, since the first day we met, at work or after work, her whenever we were around each other, we talked and interacted like we had known each other for years already. But we were both in relationships with other people at the time, so it stayed just as friends, and nothing more. Since then, we have both traveled and done our own things and chatted on and off. The best part being it's a very low-maintenance friendship, and if we ever did get to see each other, we had the best time ever as friends and never went any further. Except one time we were at a hotel room with a bunch of other friends just drinking, listening to music, and then we all started wrestling and just doing drunk people stuff around the room. Then when another friend arrived, everybody else went downstairs to meet them, while Clara and I stayed upstairs, still running around doing the same drunken stuff. We ended up in the laundry room, with her face resting in my palm and her biting, not hard, the end of my thumb, while staring into each other's eyes. I kissed her, and she kissed back. It only lasted a few seconds, and then she pulled away and said we shouldn't. I honestly didn't care, because I just put it down to drunken shenanigans. We moved on, had a great night, and that was the end of that. Over time, we both had relationships with other people, and just lived our lives, and whenever we got the chance to hang out or see each other, we would drink to catch up and just chill. She flew from over east, and spent Christmas here at our place that I usually shared with a couple of people. But at this moment, there were about a total of 13 people staying here for the holidays. We all went out one night, got drunk, had a great time, and then came back to my place. We ended up sleeping in my bed, but nothing happened, which for me was kind of weird. But at the same time, I was happy she had somewhere safe to stay and had enough trust between us to do so. She only stayed the one night, as she was also waiting for some other, at the time mutual friends, to arrive as they drove from over east. We spent the whole next day together just chilling at the beach and getting over our hangovers. Then until recently, she was finally leaving Australia for good. She stayed at our place again for about a week or so. This time she just slept on the couch. But a few nights out of that week, we would go out, have a few drinks, and then ended up drunk wrestling around the living room and on the couch. At some points, we would kind of stop and just stare at each other or even just cuddle on the couch, drunk or sober. I wasn't sure if I should make a move or do something more because the last time I did when the moment seemed right, she said we shouldn't. So I kind of put her in the friend zone in my mind and didn't want to make anything weird. Then one night we cooked dinner together the last night before leaving the country. As we were talking and preparing food, we both happened to turn and grab something and ended up face to face and again just went silent and stared into each other's eyes for a moment. Again, I didn't make a move or anything because during this week she would say things like, "Do you think when we are together people know we are friends? Or like brother and sister kind of?" Or during random conversations while we would be cuddling on the couch, she would mention how she was on her period and how us being friends is awesome. I honestly thought it's better to stay friends and never cross that line, because if I really wanted so bad, I could get that from other FWB or go out and find it elsewhere on a night out. Before she left, she said she wanted me to come to Thailand for her birthday, at this point 5 months away. I said sure as I needed a holiday, and what better excuse. But after she had left, I started playing these situations in my head and also after the odd drunk video calls or messages we would send each other. I came to realize maybe I did want to cross that line with her. Fast forward to now, I went to Thailand for 10 days. 7 of those days we spent together chilling and cruising around and doing our thing, but nothing happened. We did our normal thing, but there never seemed to be a good moment to make a move, at least to me. I mean, I landed in Bangkok early morning, and she landed in the evening. The moment she arrived, she told me how she was on her period, and is sick, and doesn't feel good, and that's honestly cool. I was just genuinely happy to see her, after not seeing her for a while. We made our way down from Bangkok to an island she had already spent a lot of time on previously, and she was planning on staying and being there for the next few months. She had a bunch of people already there that she knew. I got really seasick on the way to the island, and just wanted to chill, but the people she knew were already planning to go out this night. The people she knew were lovely as well, very welcoming, and were genuinely nice people all around. But I was messed up, we sat there and drank. But eventually I just went back to the room to sleep and rest before the party. Then when it came to the party, I was still feeling messed up and didn't want to go. She said I really don't have to, if I don't want to. She said she can call at 11:30 p.m. or midnight because they won't be leaving for the actual party until then, so I can get some rest and maybe come out. I agreed, stayed to get some sleep, as I thought it would be all good. She called around midnight and I said I was still feeling messed up, which, in all honesty, I probably could have gone. Like, I wasn't sick, I just didn't want to be around a bunch of drunk people. She said it was fine that she was kind of drunk and had some mushrooms and just kept telling me how much she loved me. And when she gets back, she's coming back to wake me up. Which sure enough, around 4 to 5 a.m. she comes back, walks into the room, and jumped into bed with me. We just laid there and cuddled for a bit. I was trying to talk and not fall straight back to sleep. But she got up, and I pretty much went straight back to sleep. But then from this day, things got weird. She was kind of standoffish. And the usual chill Clara I knew was gone, like it was definitely something to do with the hangover. But I have been hungover with her plenty of times, and this was different. Then the next 3 days, she would be happy and then standoffish, when I would make the usual inside jokes or push her buttons and be a bit annoying like we usually do to each other, or things we would usually find humor in together. I would get the cold shoulder, or she would say it's nothing, I'm just hangry. But then also she would kiss me on my cheek or forehead, and on some occasions would even give me a quick peck on my chest while we hugged and cuddled for a bit, which had been normal behavior for a while at this point. Now I'm confused. After all this time I had thought we are friends, and nothing more. I didn't pick up any signs that were out of our normal behavior together that directly pointed to or told me to make a move. I mean, our first day on the island, somebody asked how we knew each other, or asked if we were related or something. And she just said in front of everyone that I'm her brother-in-law. It didn't bother me, it just made me think, well, cool, let's just keep it as friends. So I wasn't planning to make any moves from that point on, but just enjoy the fact I'm literally on an island in paradise with someone that I'm not in love with. Well, the more I think about it, I'm not sure anymore. but that I genuinely have a lot of love for. I left and went back to Bangkok a day before I planned to because I felt weird, and that honestly, if we were together any longer, it might affect the friendship we do have. But I feel the damage is already done. While in Bangkok, I went out the last 2 nights, found a Kiwi lad and German dude about the same age at a random bar, and got completely pissed up, and had a great time seeing a side of Bangkok I had not seen or experienced before. But now being back in Australia, I can't stop thinking about it. Did I miss something? Did I do something wrong? I can usually just move past something like this, but with her it is different. Now I feel like my own insecurities stopped me from being a man and doing something like taking control of the situation, or caused me to be blinded and misread signs that were clearly there, and possibly stopped myself from actually being happy with someone who is scarily similar in humor, music, interests, hobbies, basically everything we do, but also just different enough to keep things interesting. I want to call and ask her and be straightforward and tell her what I'm thinking, but is that the right thing to do? Has that ship sailed already, and now I have to accept I missed my chance? It has only been just under a week since I saw her last. Should I give it more time before calling, asking if I'm just delusional, or does she also feel the same way? Or is this a one-way ticket to ruining a friendship with someone I truly care about and would actually be devastated if I was to lose having them in my life? OP is not an AH for being confused in his platonic relationship. OP's friend is an AH for not clarifying her feelings for him and distancing herself from him. OP did nothing wrong. He was just trying to stay within his limits. As for scores, I would rate OP's friend 2.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale.
AITA for slapping my mother. After years of inappropriate touching and groping,
I, 18M, and my mother, 48F, have a very constrained relationship. She's been verbally abusive since my father divorced her and passed away while I was 9. For more context, I'm a special needs person, and I'm considered somewhat mentally disabled. My family has been aware of this since I was approximately 15. My mother touching me inappropriately started when I was around 12 during puberty, and she'd do it anywhere regardless of the people. I thought it was normal because my entire family never said a word, and I stayed inside so I had no outside input. I ended up discussing this matter on an old forum, and got the courage to stand up for myself to only be met with yelling and taunting. A few days ago, my mother and I got into a heated argument, ended up in me breaking down and bringing up all the abuse my mother has put me through, including the groping. She got very upset and touched me in that very moment, causing me to flinch and slap her. Since that day, I've received angry phone calls and texts from relatives talking about how ungrateful I am, since I can't appreciate a mother's love. AITA? Edit?
I may not be able to respond to all comments, so sorry. I just want to say thank you to everyone who's offering help to me. I'd also like to answer a few questions that have come up. Q. What's your definition of groping?
A. Touching someone without their consent, my case being touched on the rear and genitalia. Q. Do you have other family/people in general to live with? A. Yes, I am actually in the process of trying to find a suitable home. Due to my special needs, it's difficult to align schedules with other people and closer friends, as well as the fact I live in a low-income area, so it's hard to start providing for another individual. I'd also like to add more information regarding my mother. She has been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and refuses to get therapy nor take her medication regularly. I'm the youngest out of 3 siblings, and oftentimes were neglected in my childhood. I've been diagnosed with autism, which makes it hard to verbally communicate. It's even worse, since English isn't my first language. All of this tying back to her. I'm currently on medication and going to a therapist occasionally due to my ongoing struggles. Thank you again for your support. OP is not the AH for standing up against his mom's inappropriate and abusive actions. Though slapping is not an ideal response, it was a reaction to traumatic situation that OP's mom created. OP did nothing wrong here, and I would rate him 0. And OP's mom 4 out of 5 on the AH scale.
Let's now jump onto the next story from Consideration Low 6096. Elderly mom is upset that we are asking her to stay in a hotel if she visits. I am an only child, 55F, and my dad died 15 years ago. I grew up in a household where my dad was a functioning alcoholic, and my mom was always telling me that if he didn't stop drinking and taking sleeping pills, he would simply not wake up some morning. or that if your dad doesn't stop drinking, we are packing up and leaving. As I grew a bit older, I took it upon myself to keep an eye on my dad, get the keys from him, count drinks and sleeping pills, etc., to help keep the peace. This morphed into full-blown anxiety that I battle as an adult with therapy and medication. My mum was always making things about her. She also pinched my thighs, pointing out my cellulite from middle school onward, and embarrassed me in front of my friends, as well as belittling any of my achievements. It seems like she was always in some kind of competition with me. Fast forward to my dad's death in 2009. I had moved over 500 miles away for college as soon as I could do so and stayed there. My dad, despite the drinking, was a pretty good dad and an even better grandfather to the 4 kids I had in my marriage. When he died, I rushed home to help my mom, staying for 2 weeks to be her emotional rock, plan the funeral, help with financial planning, etc. When I flew back home, I called her every single day for a solid year to check up on her, despite raising 4 kids and working full-time and volunteering. She never once asked me if I was okay. I also had to rush home in 2018 to help her after a fall, a stint in assisted living, and then a hospitalization where she was given medications she was allergic to. I am her POA and healthcare POA. I did so unquestioningly. We have always had a strained relationship, and I don't tell her many personal things about myself. She has not been any closer or better with my children who are now in their 20s. Sadly, one of my sons was diagnosed with cancer, and after 5 years of suffering died about a year ago at the age of 25. He was living at home with me, and when he was placed on hospice, she threw an enormous tantrum because he did not want her to visit. She had seen him the previous month, and he only wanted his siblings, a couple of friends, me and his stepdad to be with him. She called up screaming at me and left nasty voicemails about how she could not believe I was doing this to her. I stood my ground and explained that we were respecting the wishes of my dying son. Not once during this excruciating time did she ask me how I was doing or how his siblings were coping. Not once after he died did she ever check up on me or them. She came to the funeral and barely spoke to any of us. She gave me the silent treatment for not allowing her to see him as he was dying. The hospice nurses affirmed that we were doing right by my son, making his last days exactly as he had requested. She simply could not fathom it and made it all about her. After a year and many months of silence following the death of my son, I reached out. Her 80th birthday was coming up, and so my husband and I flew up to see her and spent the weekend taking her out to eat and to do a few fun things she would like. Just 2 weeks after that, she had a very severe car accident and was in the ICU and the hospital for about 3 weeks. We stayed there the entire time to ensure her care, and then stayed an additional week to be sure she was settled at the skilled nursing facility. So we spent a month there working remotely and juggling long stints in the hospital with her. We flew back there again for a solid week when she was released to go back home, and I coordinated in-home health services for her with 2 different companies. She complained that we couldn't/wouldn't stay longer and didn't really thank us. Fast forward to today. She is again in skilled nursing, about to be released home after falling at home. She has a walker, no idea if she uses it as she should, and refuses to use the life alert device we purchased for her, as she is prone to falls, insists on staying in her own home and living alone, etc. She wanted to come visit us for Thanksgiving and was insisting that she stay with us, but since she was unable to travel the argument due to her hospitalization, that conversation was avoided. The living situation in our home, as a blended family, is that there are 4 kids in total. My husband's son and my 2 sons and my daughter. They are all adults in their 20s. My husband's son and my daughter are in college and will be home visiting over Christmas for about a month. My 2 sons live with us temporarily as they finalize launching into adulthood. All rooms are taken, and 2 significant others will also be visiting during Christmas break. We have a full house. The last time my mom came to visit, she also had to stay in a hotel, as my son was an inconvenience. Dying in the guest room is pretty thoughtless if you are my mom. She asked yesterday if I had given any thought to where she would stay over Christmas, and I reminded her that the house was full, including the use of at least 1 air mattress, and suggested she would need a hotel. Also, hotels are handicap accessible, which she needs for her walker. Our house is not. She then said that if my kids cared about seeing their grandmother, and if I loved her, Then I would put 2 of the kids in a hotel and give her the guest room. I refused. I am standing my ground this time, as she needs to learn that life will not revolve around her wishes. I will be there if she needs me, but she is not entitled to a guest room. And honestly, even if I had a room, I do not want her here. Nobody likes to be around her, and I have to admit that I help her out of obligation when she needs it. I am resigned to the fact that I will never have the mom I wished for as a child, and that I will never be close to my mom. However, I cannot go no contact, since she keeps having health issues and I am AITA to assist her. How should I deal with the general situation with my aging mom? Also, and more specifically, is it wrong not to shove the adult kids into a hotel for a week to accommodate her? OP is not an AH for refusing her mother. OP's mother is an AH for giving her emotional abuse in the past. Her demand is not acceptable to OP. OP did nothing wrong. Despite having a strained relationship with her mother, OP continues to support her, so I would rate OP 0 out of 5 and OP's mother 2.5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from real_appointment 8704. AITA for asking my boyfriend's mom family to stop making messes everywhere and ruining the clean house in 2 days. Context. I am 16F. My boyfriend is 17M. I live with him and his family due to family issues. We've been dating for about a year, and I've lived there for about 9 months. I do all of the laundry, dishes, cleaning, etc. I just recently got a job at our local grocery store to help pay for things around the house. That quickly turned into me buying the cat food, groceries, shower hygiene products, basically everything they use. They make insane amounts of laundry, and I have to do it. Laundry is not cheap. I spend approximately $40 every time I go there, once a week. At first, I did all this as a version of earning my keep, but now it feels like I'm being taken advantage of. I buy every single thing in the house, which is not cheap at all. I'm underage, so I can only have so many hours a week. I've been working my full 28 allowed hours and making about $800 to $900 a month. I get paid weekly. After I buy everything for the house, I have nothing left. I've had this job for 4 months, and I have yet to buy myself anything except one dresser for $80. My boyfriend works half my hours, and he spends all his money on whatever he wants, knowing that I am supporting his entire family. He doesn't do any cleaning, neither does his mother. In fact, when I moved in, her room was too messy for her to sleep in, so she was sleeping in the living room. After about 6 months of her destroying the living room every time I cleaned, I went up and tidied her bedroom up just enough for her to sleep in there. She had at least 25 baskets and containers full of laundry in there. I just shoved the laundry to the side the first time I cleaned. She still did not sleep in there. So after about a month, realizing she was not going to sleep in there, I fully cleaned it and hung up her clothes, etc. And she still did not sleep in her room. She continued to ruin the living room. When I was talking to my boyfriend's grandma, she mentioned to me that his mom was complaining she couldn't sleep in there because she had nothing to watch on TV. So I got her a Roku and cleaned her room again, because somehow, even though she wasn't sleeping in there, it got to be a mess again. Even after that, my boyfriend had to force her to sleep in her room. For about the first 6 months I lived there, I kept his little brother's room clean. However, I stopped because I didn't like cleaning up his peed underwear and bedding. He's 11. I clean the house every single day, and every single day, it becomes a mess again. I even started cyber school to try and keep up with their messes and work. Anyway, we were in the car one morning, and me and my boyfriend were mad at each other because I was upset that I do so much for him. I spend all my time either with him or cleaning, doing things for him, and he just simply does not pay attention to me. So, me being upset, not mad, about him acting like he hates me all the time, made him mad. Basically, it made him mad that he made me sad. So, we were in the car, about to take him to school, I'm cyber, and he told me to grow up. I was baffled. I said, "You want to act like adults. You won't let me leave when you make me upset. But you don't want to be the one to go to the laundromat, and you don't want to be the one to do the cleaning or the dishes, but you want to play adults. Makes sense." And his mother told me to shut the up. At this point, I lost it. How could she have all people tell me to shut up? She's the only adult in the house, and she acts the same as her 11-year-old son, who she doesn't make shower, by the way. I do everything for her. I mother her children. I told her that she had no room to tell me to shut up because her son doesn't treat me well or nicely at all and I do her laundry. Meanwhile, she's 40 years old. Fast forward to a couple of weeks ago, I tried to sit down and talk to her because I don't want to do 15 bags of laundry every week. I asked her to try and not throw her clean clothes in with wet towels and let them get mildew and just to cut back the amount of laundry, and she told me that I was rubbing it in her face. That is not my intention. I am absolutely overwhelmed. I spend all of my time doing things she should be doing. She is their mother after all. I wouldn't mind cleaning and stuff if I didn't have to do insane amounts of cleaning and laundry every day of my life. She says that she can't do this stuff because she works open to close at the bar, but she only works 3 or 4 days a week and she doesn't always work open to close. I know she has time to clean up her messes because while I'm cleaning, I can clearly see her sitting on the couch. She doesn't want to clean after work. Me either, but I just worked 8 hours and I'm still cleaning. All I ask is that they either help out a little or stop making so much laundry and making so many messes. I can't do this much longer, and my boyfriend is not willing to listen to what I have to say. He makes me feel terrible about myself all the time, which is insane, because I'm the only reason his family has clean clothes and food to eat. For example, basically everything I say to him gets an annoyed response, or I get screamed at for just talking. He works about 3, 6 about 4 days a week. Actually 6, but he calls off all the time. I never get out of work before 8. So say I'm working 3, 10, and he worked 3, 6. I get home at 10, and he seems happy to see me. We're hanging out and having fun. But in maybe 30 minutes, he gets on his game and ignores me. When I try to talk to him, I get yelled at. But why didn't he get on the game for the extra 4 hours he had that I wasn't home? It feels like he doesn't want me there because he does absolutely everything in his power to avoid me, but when I try to leave and go to my aunt's house, he throws a tantrum, like an actual toddler. He says things like, "Please don't leave, I'll fix it." He promises he's sorry for treating me the way he does, and ignoring me constantly. He promises he'll fix it, but it never changes. He just thinks saying, "I love you," will actually make me feel loved, which it would if his actions didn't say the complete opposite. AITA? OP is not an AH for requesting help from her boyfriend. OP's boyfriend is an AH for not supporting and helping her and refusing to accept her request. OP's boyfriend's mother is also an AH for refusing to help OP, so I would rate OP's boyfriend 2.5 and OP's boyfriend's mother 1.5. As for OP, she gets nothing. Let's now jump onto the next story from Dutch Vanderplan, 2135. AITA. If I cut my parents off after I'm out of their house. I 19M have always had a very big problem with saying no to my parents, in the sense that I have pretty much never said no to them, due to irrational fears of mine. This summer, my stepdad, we'll call him Bob, found a newfound interest in the church. We've never gone to church really except for a couple of Christmas masses. Personally, I've been atheist for a couple years now, but I've never told my parents this because they aren't accepting of non-religious people. Anyways, around like mid-July, Bob tells me that I have to go to church with him and the family every Sunday as a condition to live under his roof. 2 things to note is that I've been job searching all summer, but it's been a rough job market. I had a job at Spirit Halloween, but then the season ended and I was out of work again. Another thing to note is that I've been dating a trans man, who we'll call Timmy, that my parents have not been accepting of at all. They refuse to use their preferred name and pronouns and have demanded that I don't use them while I'm home. We live pretty close, so I'm over at his more often than not. Anyways, about a few days after my employment at Spirit ended, I got a text from my mum that Bob didn't want me over at Timmy's house until I got a job. My mum had taken my siblings and had been shopping. When she got home, she told me that I had to home by 5:30 so I could go to church with them. It was a Friday. I was very angry and wanted to yell at her, but I also didn't want to blow up at her, so I just left. 5:30 comes around and she calls me asking if I'm coming home and I say no. I tell her that I am 19 and that I am genuinely putting as much as I can into getting a job. I also say that I should be able to do what I want to do with my free time. She goes on some, "Are you really going to argue with me?" and then just says fine, but we need to have a big talk about this weekend. Later in the night, Bob calls me, telling me I had been extremely disrespectful and that I wasn't a real adult because I wasn't providing for myself. He kind of just yapped and repeated himself for a while, and basically told me that if I couldn't obey their rules, then he'd have to buy me out, as in pay me to leave. And that's how that started. As to why I plan to cut them off, they're just kind of bad people. Anytime I talk to them about anything, they always make it about themselves. I.e., after the whole thing that happened, I had told my mom that I didn't feel supported, and she just told me that I was wrong and how she had it harder, and how she does this and that. Also, I told her that I felt that everything I do feels underappreciated, and they act like I don't do anything ever, and she once again told me that I was wrong, and then told me that, in the grand scheme of things, I don't. For context, I do most of the chores at the house. I do most of the laundry, if not all. I clean all the dishes and wipe off counters in the kitchen. I sweep and vacuum the house when they decide it's needed. I clean up after our 2 cats. I take out the trash. I clean the bathrooms during cleaning day. I'm responsible for walking the dogs so they don't themselves, and I weed their yard when they demand it. They rarely ever help with these things, and they don't ever show that they appreciate it. Bobbert has also made quite the few homophobic, racist, and comments. He has openly used slurs in the house, and he's racist towards most races. They've also called me lazy and unmotivated, as a way of motivating me to get a job. Bob has called me fat and lazy, as a way of lashing out, because I missed some dog shit that was on the carpet that I didn't see and didn't pick it up. They've made many comments on my stomach and how it stands out. I'd like to note that I am not at all unhealthily overweight. They had banned Timmy from our house because he might confuse the kids.
There is much more, but to finish it off, Bob does own Mein Kampf. So, AITA if I cut off my parents? OP is not an AH for cutting off contact with his toxic parents. OP is a victim of emotional abuse and has the right to take steps to protect his emotional well-being. OP's parents are AHs for being unsupportive towards OP. So, I would rate OP's parents 2.5 and OP 0 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from BlueSpeedster_35.
AITA? For not on the speaking term with my older brother because he always belittles me and trick our mom? TLDR. I made a deal with my older brother to join our money and buy our mother a new cell phone. My mom ended up buying my brother's wife's used phone. For context, we are an Asian family which very common to have seniority in our household. That is, to call older brother as older brother every time we address them. Hope you get the idea. My brother and I are also 10 years apart. I never liked the idea. One time, I tried to give money to my older brother on his birthday, because that's what he does to me when I am having my birthdays, and he was insulted. He never wants to accept my help, because, well, he is the older brother, and he is somewhat superior than me, and I will always be his little brother. I end up learning to live with this, and never really think about this growing up. We live separate lives, and never really close to each other. I personally think I am now in a much better situation than him. He is now an employee of a company, in which he repeatedly says that he doesn't like his job, and only there to survive. Myself, on the other hand, managed to get my PhD and living happily in another country with a good job and high salary. The issue came a couple of years ago when I initiated him to join money and buy a cell phone for our mother. I was thinking, it must be nice if my mother knew that 2 of his sons come together to buy her a nice cell phone. Her current phone has a very bad battery, and you know what? The phone is previously owned by my brother. So, another thing about my brother is that he has a rather peculiar frame of thoughts about money, cell phone, in particular, and materialistic in general. For him, he cannot stand to sell a nice phone that was used to be very expensive and becomes cheap. I mean, it's electronic, it happens.
So for his last phone, he prefers to give it to my mom. He felt good about it. But reality is, he had been using that phone for years, and of course the phone was not in tip-top condition anymore. It's no surprise that after some time, the phone needed to charge 2 or 3 times daily. If you ask why I don't just buy my mom a phone, well, firstly, this kind of things happen without me knowing, cause I live abroad. Secondly, I have also bought my mom a washing machine, water dispenser. I have also given a monthly allowance to my mom far better than my brother. Back to the story, he initially agreed with the idea and agreed to help her find a new phone. We even agreed on which phone to buy. They then went to a mall with lots of phone shops. And because we are in different time zones, I couldn't be available at that time. I thought everything should have gone smoothly. What happened then?
I woke up knowing that the matter has been resolved. My mom finally got my brother's wife's used phone. He said that he, my brother, sold the phone to my mom at a decent price and made my mom paid in installments for the phone. The phone was the Samsung early generation of flip Android smartphone, where it was experimental in nature. I knew him and his wife well enough to know what really happened. His wife most likely wanted to follow the trend by buying that phone, but didn't like it after some time. My brother then found out that the price of the phone slashed to its 50% after 1 year of its release, because nobody likes it. And because my brother has his peculiar frame of thought, I mentioned earlier, he prefers to sell it to my mom because he would get a better price. If the price selling point was at 50%, selling it to a used phone vendor would give him less than 50% because the vendor needs to make a profit. Once I knew about this, I became very angry. Firstly, buying a phone for my mom was my idea. I said to him that we were initially agreed to each other about the idea. How come he did not consult me when there is a rather extreme change of plan? Secondly, the main idea is to give a gift to my mom. How come such a lovely idea became my mom buying the phone from him and even pay in installments for the phone? Thirdly, even after the price of the phone was already at 50% of the original price, the price still can be considered expensive. This is because the phone was too expensive to begin with buying new. It's because of the flip feature. But other specifications were rather mid. With the same price at 50%, she could have a far better, newer Samsung phone that is not flip. When I confronted this, my brother said that my mom was okay with the deal and liked the phone because it's small. I said, okay, but how come she's paying for it? If you just gave it to her, I would be less angry. And the funny thing was, the way my mom paying the installment is by my brother cutting my mom's monthly allowance until the phone is paid. Considering how small her monthly allowance from my brother is, it would take more than a year before she finishes the installment. I said, I didn't want to pay because this was a shitty deal. I also mentioned that historically, the prior phone he gave her had battery issues. He said he already went to Samsung vendor and confirmed the battery is at 100%. I said to him, yeah, for how long? It's not new. I continued confronting him again with all the arguments. He could not answer, but instead my mom agreed with him, and I quoted him saying, she's smart, she knows what's happening. Well, again, I knew my mom well enough to understand that she just wants to help my brother, and she usually says yes to his son's requests. She most probably thinks she's doing my brother a favor, knowing that my brother wants to sell the phone. I then accused him of tricking our mother and for his advantage, but he did not accept that. He said he offered the deal, and my mother accepted. For me, yeah, but the deal happened driven by your wanting to seek a better deal. The reasoning of, I offered the deal and she accepted, would be too superficial. It's right because you offered and she accepted, but it's wrong at the same time because of the motivation. We should take care of our mom and not making a profit from her, looking deeper at the event. This most likely happened because my brother's unconscious way of always seeking profit, and the fact he was not asking me about the deal, was because he thought my opinion, or me, did not matter. Well, who am I? I am just his little brother. How do I know? Because when I confronted him for not asking and cut me off from the event, even though I was the one who initiated the idea of buying a phone, he simply said, I forgot to think about you. So after this confrontation, we have not been on speaking terms, and it's been 2 years. OP is not an AH for going no contact with his brother. OP's brother is an AH for tricking their mother and disrespectfully behaving with OP. OP's reaction is completely justified. She did nothing wrong. So I would rate OP's brother 2.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. What do the Mac Reddit fans think? Is the OP an AH or not? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like the stories I brought you, just hit the like button, share them as much as you can, and don't forget to subscribe to Mac Reddit for a daily dose. Bye bye. See you tomorrow with some more spicy fries.